It's good. Okay, I think it sounds all right. Welcome to our budget review meeting. We're going to start as we usually do with playing Canada. Please stand if you're able. Thank you. I'll read our Indigenous Land Acknowledgement Statement. The municipality of Whitestone recognizes all of Canada resides on traditional, unceded and/or treaty lands, Indigenous people of Turtle Island. We recognize our municipality on the Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory is home to many past, present, and future Indigenous families. This acknowledgement of the land is a declaration of our commitment and collective responsibility to reconcile the past and to honor and value the culture, history, and relationships we have with one another. I'll now ask if any councillor has a pecuniary interest to disclose in today's proceedings. Councillor Nash.
Yeah, sorry. I'd like to report that I have an interest in regards to item 16-440-4 on the budget. And when we talk about that, is now leave the building and come back in once that item is discussed.
What page is that? Sorry.
I'm not sure what page it is, but it's in regards to the road grounds.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? All right. We need a motion then to approve our agenda as circulated. Mover and seconder, moved by Councillor Woods, seconded by Councillor Bray. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. We have an agenda. And as our normal practice is to go into the committee of the whole to permit discussion without any particular motion on the floor. Can I get a mover and seconder, please, to Councillor Lamb moves, seconded by Councillor Bray. At this meeting, move into committee of the whole at 3:06 p.m. All those in favor? Thank you, that's carried. On our next meeting, our next motion is to reconvene to a regular meeting. We're not there yet. So, as I, we're going to consider the budget, and I believe that our treasurer, Manish Kalal, has some introductory remarks to introduce it, and then we'll get into the detailed discussion. Manish?
Through your mayor, other council member. I'm pleased to present preliminary first draft of budget for the year 2023. Below is the summary of the budget highlights. A tax rate increase of 6% will generate a revenue of $3,303,555 for discussion purpose. A total SO grant of $1,447,628, which we're getting from OMF, ATF, gas tax, and Ontario infrastructure has been allocated for the year 2023. The mandatory payment levy for the year 2023 is $1,007,343 and utilized for impact, not payable sound fiscal unit, OPP, District of Perry Sound Social Service Board, Belvedere Heights, ambulance levy, Perry Sound Industrial Park, and 911 services. The ambulance levy has been increased by 5% from the previous year, while there are no significant increase in the levies. The total salary obligation for the year, which includes CPP, EI, WSI, WSIB, health benefit, EHT, and bonus payment will be $1,700, $1,711,113 for the year. A capital budget proposal for $1,960,651 put for. Pre-wall replacement in Pumper, 3,500 will be added in the second draft for fire department. The estimated debt loan committed and proposed is $394,849. The annual debt repayment is 10.96%, which is slightly higher than in the asset management plan of 10%. There is an overall shortfall of $242,310, which include $109,090 for operating budget and $133,220 for special capital projects. Thank you for taking your time to review this preliminary budget. Thank you.
Should ask these folks if they want a table to sit on. We can get them a table.
Okay.
Would you ladies like a table to put your things on or to work from? Because we can get your table pretty quick. You're okay?
All right. Okay, with that introduction, I guess. I mean, we do of course have line by line and budget proposal, but I'm wondering if it would make sense to ask first before we sort of just dive in, if there are any questions that you would have about the first, really the first I don't know, 4 pages or so, 6 pages, I guess, that Manish has commented on very briefly. Are there any of those? I mean, most of it's pretty self-explanatory, but there might be some questions for concerns or things of that sort. So, anybody want to ask anything on that? Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I have several, so I don't know how you want to do it. Maybe they're the same question
that others may have, I don't know, but let me just.
Go ahead,
So, Manish, the preliminary tax increase of 6% for discussion purpose. I know later on you say the operating budget is approximately 5.95% increase for operating expenses. Are those two different figures? Like what's built in? 6% for operating plus capital together, or are they separate, or what? Are they the same number again? Did you see where I'm going? The preliminary increase is 6%. So I guess the way I read it, if we were able to find the 242,000 that we're short, let's assume remotely that was zero, right? The operating budget would go up 5.95, but if we took into account all the things you've got in the budget for capital, the overall tax rate is 6. That correct? Yes. Okay, two different figures. So, my second question is the additional tax revenue resulting from new assessment, new buildings, renovations for 2023 is $45,000. Barb, who's at the table, was the first one to properly explain this some years ago because, and she is right. So I take it that 1.48% is built into the revenue, correct? But again, no other increases of impact are in there. Or in other words, if they decided for some reason in 2023 to use the 2020 assessment, none of that impact is in there because it shouldn't be, right? And that's my question.
I think I have it in there. Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, the 1.45 is just, that is all that is in the base right now. There is no overall value increase in assessment this year. The assessment is based on 2016 as it has been for a number of years. So it's straight. I mean, basically last year's tax rate times this year's assessment generates an extra 45,000.
Okay. Again, if I keep going, the ambulance levy under levies, when I looked at all the levies, they're all pretty much, I guess, under control. But it seems to me that the ambulance levy, and I may be wrong, it's either the ambulance or 911 has gone up significantly in like every year. So can someone, maybe it's Archie, I don't know, explain the ambulance levy going up like 5%? Because I think that's going up incrementally pretty high. What's going on with the ambulance service? Or is it because everything else is 2% minus, 3%? It's the highest. We're paying $208,000 a year for ambulance. That doesn't include our fire department who responds to most of them. Right? There's no cost to that.
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, the ambulance levy. The ambulance levy comes to us as a levy coming from the town of Perry Sound. So it's one of those levies that we more or less receive the bill, the allocations, and pay it. So I can't answer that question. I don't think we have all the information on why the ambulance levy is gone. I'm not sure. Okay, we don't know.
Me, I'm on page 3 now. Public Works. Excuse me. Related commodity price increases are expected with gravel, understand, salt, calcium, etc. Increases are estimated at this time. Tenders will confirm. What's the estimate that you? What is that? What percentage did you use on all these items? Because it says increases are estimated.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. We did consult the providers, the contract providers for our major services, and we expect them with the drivers. Expected increases are over year over year, and those numbers were then fed into
What was the percentage?
Oh, and they fluctuate for like the gravel, they say it's 10 to 15. There's about 3% calcium, which is we expected. Winter sand is also up a little bit as well.
Okay, so each one is different and you've estimated, because I went into, I think what's called a construction indice, right? I think it's the same thing. And it indicated about 13–15%. So with what all this stuff's going up, so gravel and a like is going to go up. Generally, overall, that amount might be 1% and then a 20%.
I did reach out to each one of our providers specifically, like multiple in cases, there's multiple drivers, and talk directly with them, see what the drivers were. For that, what they're seeing.
So when you say tenders will confirm, we're not going to get, here's 100,000 for gravel, oh, we estimated it at 10%, it came in at 28%. You know, you're confident in the number, because, you know, inflation and all it's.
The research I've done, the background we have, best information we have. I don't want a crystal ball exactly what they're going to come back at. But to my knowledge, with the research I've done, reaching out, we do have good information. We shouldn't have any surprises.
Okay, I'll hold you to it.
I appreciate that.
Hopefully 2 months from now, I'm gonna say surprise. Okay. The road grant has increased from 3% from the 2022 budget. Do we know how much the road grant expanded this year? Because, you know, there's a number of roads that do not participate every year, there's a few more that do participate. We were pretty much on budget, I thought, on the road grant. But were there a lot of new roads this year or not? And is that been factored in if there's even more roads next? In the 3%, so in the 3%, if we had 3 more roads that took up 1.5% of that, that's the case, or did we just say 3% of them can?
Through you, Mayor. We didn't factor that any incremental on the road. We just captured the 3% increase on the previous year.
Okay, so when we get to that line item, we may want to factor in that there be more roads to participate, because every year there are. I think like say. Again, stop me if you want to. The fine ladies in the library are here. I'm not gonna touch that one, they'll answer all your questions. Ice cap gone from 10.5, you highlight that, to 15,000. Is there a particular reason for that ice cap at that wording? What is it that we're doing in ice cap that's putting it up another?
Can I answer that?
Or actually, definitely near the double.
Councillor Bray's going to answer.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this increases because we are now entering stage 2 and 3, and we will be using their staff probably a little bit more. CAO and the CIO and I will have a meeting next week, so we'll be able to have a better idea of where we're going. But this all goes back to some of the information that I've received around the draft guidelines for municipalities, and right now it really it's built in that the Golden Horseshoe area is required to have climate change mitigation in their official plans. I'm sure that we will be in there eventually, and I'm sure that the province won't leave out the rest of Ontario. And so that means that, you know, for us being with the rest of the 6 other municipalities, we're grouping together to be able to have the staff that the municipalities down in Southern Ontario are having to hire on their own. And I just saw one for Aurelia that they're hiring, they're looking for a climate action manager, and that's, you know, $70,000 to $9,000 position. So I can see that this is really an extension of, what we would do if we, by grouping together, we're not paying the same price as what somebody, another municipality would.
It's just to do with our carbon footprint.
Yeah, it's to do with greenhouse gases, which is required.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Expenses, again, I'm just going to come into an end here. Expenses as well, where final recommendation of Wallace Cash Landings task force have not been accounted for. But my question is that shouldn't be too expensive, because as I understand the last meeting, the idea of paid parking, but Wallace Cash was, I think, if I understand it correctly, pretty much squashed by the committee up there. So is there going to be an expense or revenue necessarily related to the Wallace Cash parking task force? I know that.
Yeah, I'll answer that. What I think you're gonna find is bad news is that it's actually the reverse of what you just said. The proposal that the task force was working on, it had a revenue side to offset some expenses. And sort of at the 11th hour, everybody had been working away on this, and but folks started to say, well, we don't care whether you charge money for parking. Some people, of course, think the municipality should provide it for free, which the municipality could decide to do. But there are costs involved. Okay, so the costs that are involved there, I can give you an indication of what they are. There are some because council last year said we are going to made a commitment to move in this direction. So the Cottagers Association discontinued their voluntary program. They were collecting some revenue, and they were using that revenue, by the way, not for parking purposes, really, but for expenses related to the docks and the safety boom at the dam, which strictly speaking is the municipality's responsibility because the municipality owns it, water level and water quality monitoring and those kinds of things. And the understanding of the task force was that the municipality would absorb those costs. So those costs are somewhere round numbers, probably about $4,000 a year, and they're an annual recurring cost. But in addition to that, there's the consensus seems to be that we're pretty much at capacity for parking, and there's also a dock that needs to be replaced. So there's some capital expenses that would also have to go into the budget if the municipality is going to absorb these costs out of the tax base. If of course, if they carry ahead with the proposal for paid parking, the revenue from the parking fees will cover those costs, right? So that's that I think is something that council will have to decide ultimately. We will have hopefully a revised report. It should have been at council before now, but because of this last discussion, with the discussion we had at the last meeting, there are some changes that need to be made to the report, but that report will come to council, and council can then focus, I think, on the question of should we carry on as planned and have some revenue to offset the costs, or do the costs then go into the budget as expenses?
But is it a fair question, Mr. Mayor, to say that the committee as a majority were not in favor of paid parking at Wallaston in the last meeting? Is that a fair conclusion?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that the committee said, we don't care whether it's up to council to decide. This is there's two, keep in mind, there are 4 people at this meeting, 2 members of council, Councilor Nash, myself, two people from Cottagers Association. They said, we don't care whether you charge the people for parking or council absorbs it. That's up to council to decide whether it can afford to do that. Councillor Nash felt strongly that the municipality should absorb the cost of it. I feel strongly that the folks who use it should absorb the cost of it and that there should be fees charged. And the members from the Cottagers Association were neutral on the subject. They had previously agreed that we were gonna, and we had discussed what would be charged and all of that kind of thing, but anyway, I think they basically said, look, we're you know, we're sanguine as far, benign as far as whether the municipality decides that they want to pay for it out of general revenue. That's so that's the way it ended. And you know, my commitment, of course, is to make sure that council knows what the costs are that it's absorbing, or what or you know, or then what revenue you get to offset it if it's if you decide to charge, so the council can make a decision about that at the time.
Am I through, Mr. Mayor?
Okay.
Okay, thanks. I don't really want to get into too much discussion in the task force today. I'll wait for it to come up another day, but I think the consensus was you were correct that I believe that we shouldn't charge for parking at any boat launch anywhere in the municipality. And from what I recall from the meeting, members of the task force, the other members had, I'll say, also voiced their opinion that they wanted to be treated the same as everybody. And if we don't have paid parking in other spots, there shouldn't be paid parking at the Wasatch. That was a very strong point in the conversation. They wanted to be treated equally. And then it was talked about updating the report to say there would not be paid parking, but there would be financial implications to the municipality. And I'm sure if people from the public want to go on, I'm sure we have that recorded and posted, or somebody can get the recording from the public meeting on it. So, but I think we can talk about it in much more detail when it comes to the meeting when the task force was brought up. So taking time off today.
Okay, go on to the next one then. I didn't want to, and yeah, I just don't, I think we, you know, on that whole idea of paid parking at Wabash, that needs to council pretty quick. Because we're setting up systems where people are going to go on and get a permit for parking. We're now in March, pretty soon April comes and something's got to be decided up there. And I voted as per the recommendation last year to go towards paid parking. It was on the recommendation of the committee, and then I found out afterwards, really, committee wasn't really fussy about the paid parking, so I don't know who decided it was paid parking. But anyway, we'll leave it for another day. That needs to come quickly, because that will affect this budget, whether we're charging or not, and what the costs are going to be to administer it, in terms of bylaw enforcement and all that kind of stuff. Again, I'll just keep going on. Fire Chief Whitman has requested an increase in the forest fire reserve contribution by 10,000 from 20,000 to 30,000. But yet when I look at the figure in the budget, it's 1,000. So has that been resolved?
Yes.
And what's the final figure?
10. And to make.
No, this says contribution the increase it by 10 from 20 to 30. So it must be staying at 20, I think.
Right.
It's staying at 20. Okay, thank you very much. Only got a couple more here. These are capital projects, and I'll talk about it later. I think that's it. Thank you. That's just on the first 4 pages, right? That's thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just if I may, before we leave the subject of the reserve, maybe you can clarify something for me. My understanding, of course, is that this is money that we set aside to cover expenses, our expenses that don't get absorbed by M&R, for example, with respect to forest fires when we're involved in dealing with them. And of course, we don't know how many forest fires there are, so going to be, so we put a reserve. Is that what this is, or?
You remember a couple of years ago, we had a fire on Bunny Trail. We had a fire on the Bunny Trail. It was caused by CN. It cost us $90,000 to put out. I went after CN and recovered that $90,000. But at the end of October, if we wouldn't have received that $90,000 from CN, we have to pay M&R that cost.
Yeah.
So that money is for whatever
Yeah.
we have to be offset for the year. Yeah, I don't know how many fires we have in a year.
No, I answered the question, or I asked the question just to make sure that council understands that whatever those bills are that we get, we have to pay. So it's whether we budgeted zero or $100,000 or whatever we got in the reserve. If there's a fire, we have to fight it. And if we don't, we may recover some costs from other people. But if we don't, it just goes out, right? So that's I mean, this is, I guess, a philosophical thing is as to whether you want to try to make sure that you have a reserve to cover it or not, because whether we do or not, it's still we have to incur the expenses. Okay. Councilor Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in regards to the first 4 pages of this, what we're commenting on right now. So in regards to revenues, right now we're proposing 6% tax increase, but we're also proposing a $250,000 shortfall. The 6% does not include the $250,000 shortfall. So if I'm correct, if we were to approve the budget today exactly the way it is, and we had to make up that $250,000 shortfall, the tax increase would not be 6%, it would be a number greater than that, another 4 or 5%. Am I correct in my understanding? Okay. And then I also see it says active transport fund ATF 132,000. Is that a grant we already have? And if we do, what's it for?
Through you, Mayor.
Go ahead.
This is we are getting for sidewalk. Dave Peaser is working with the transport minister, and that is we are getting 132K on that.
Okay, and has that been approved already?
Yes.
Awesome, okay. And then I also saw potential funding. I'm gonna call it under reserve or under revenues. There was funding to be determined of 133,000. And then it says $220.22. Is that another grant we're applying for?
I couldn't get which pages we are in.
I flipped to page 3, but I'm thinking under the revenue. So it's under potential sources of funding. It says funding to be determined $133,220.82.
At the bottom of page 4.
Oh, yeah, page 3 of 5, page 4 of 26.
Yeah, that is a shortfall on the capital side, 133,222.
Yeah,
That amount is a shortfall of our capital budget.
okay.
133,22 is the capital shortfall, and operating shortfall is 109,000.
Okay, I'll come back to that then when I get to there.
Okay.
So I guess, thanks for that, Ed. So on expenses, or sorry, I'm gonna skip through expenses, just go to operating expense pressures and discussion. I know there's been quite a bit written on it, this is page 3 of 5 of the report. But when I looked at it, I know there's a lot of smaller numbers spoken about here. I see one for 12,000, one for 17,000. When I look at it, it's more just a statement, I think, that I look at it and say, what are some major real pressures from the operating expenses? And I look at it and say, overall, the CPI index, the construction price index, The 250,000 we have to put aside for the pool. The cost of our current debt financing is $350,000, which is based on almost $3 million in loans. The sidewalk that we're proposing to do bridge work, and of course, everybody's salary increases because of inflation. I think those are the real main things that are driving issues with the budget. There's a lot of big numbers there. And I think that's what's really, I see when we get to the end of funding, where I see there is a big drawing. I noticed on a couple items in there. The second last bullet, it talked about legal expenses and HR, and it says we've estimated very modestly. I think when we're going through the budget, we have to make sure that we're putting a true estimate into those instead of a modest estimate. So we have a number that will be close to actual at the end of the year instead of having a shortfall. Just my take. And then on potential funding. I guess if I'm correct, I'm just going to kind of summarize a few things here. Right now, what we're proposing is 723,000 coming out of the reserves. Debt financing is 663,000. We're proposing a shortfall of 242,000. And if you add those up, I get a number of shortfall in the budget. If we weren't taking out loans and drawing from the reserves of $1.6 million, would I be estimating that roughly correctly? That we're taking 720,000 out of the reserves. We're proposing a $660,000 loan, and we're still short $250,000. So if I'm correct, we're actually short without debt financing the reserves of $1.6 million. If I'm correct.
I don't understand your calculation. Can you explain one more time?
So right now, we're proposing to withdraw $720,000 from the reserves. We're proposing to have debt financing of $660,000. And right now, we've proposed a $250,000 shortfall. If I add those three numbers together, I get 1.625 million roughly.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, funding out of reserves is not considered to fund a shortfall. It is actually part of our asset management plan. And we basically take money out of the operating budget, put it into reserves, and the purpose of those reserves is to fund capital. Debt financing is also part of our capital plan and part of our asset management plan. So I wouldn't say that those would be a shortfall. I mean, it's similar to a home budget where you put money into your savings or you take out a bank. It's part of your overall financial plan. The actual shortfall of 242,000, part of which is capital, part of which is operating, is it genuine? Okay, we don't have, at this point, I wouldn't say we don't have the money, but we're at a reasonable level on debt financing, given that we can only fund capital projects with debt and certain types of projects with debt. And there are certain things that we can take money out of reserves for. So there's a smaller shortfall on the capital side. The operating side is a little bit different because the operating budget is your day-to-day operating household budget, if you want to call it that, funded through taxes, funded through grants, not very many, but a few. And when you get to that one, it is more about, okay, where are you going to find money for that shortfall? Because they're kind of funded differently. That's why Manish has identified it separately. So to answer your question, I think I might have been to go back to that. I wouldn't call it a $1.6 million shortfall. I would say that the true shortfall right now is the 242. The debt financing is creeping up, as Manish has identified, and it is something that attention needs to be paid for. But at the same time, we have an asset management plan of which debt financing and reserve funding is part of. It's monitoring how it's progressing as we go through the budgets.
Well, thank you, but I guess I have two more questions left, but in very simple terms, if we weren't going to take out any loans or take out any reserves, if you're calling it a household budget, if somebody said, we don't want any additional debt this year. How are we gonna do it? We have a shortfall of 1.6 million, right? If we didn't take a loan and if we didn't take the $700,000 out of the debt, we would have a shortfall, right? Even though it might be allowed to be done, I'm just getting I just wanna understand correctly, and I'm pretty sure I'm correct that our shortfall would go 1.6 million if we didn't take out any loans or take out anything from the reserves. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you were to actually
Finance.
execute the capital plan that you have,
Yeah.
and you weren't going to take money out of reserves and you weren't going to debt finance, then it would be a shortfall, yes.
Okay.
Or you could cut the capital budget.
Yeah, no, that's what I just wanted to make sure. That's why I've gone through and tried to, when we get further in. And on top of that now, there's funding to be determined. There's another shortfall of $133,000. So right now, we'd either have to take another 133 out of reserve or add it to the debt financing based on what's in here now. So, okay, I understand that. And then on the reserves, I have a couple, I think they're, a little detailed question, but hopefully you can follow this. So, last year, so in 2022, in the budget for last year, on the reserves, we'd shown that we were gonna transfer out 510,000 out of the reserves. And currently to date, based on the reserves chart that we got, we've only taken out $217,000. And I know that's waiting on the auditors to finalize that. But how, I guess my question is, how confident are we that the 217,000 was taken out last year isn't gonna change from the audit? Do we have it, like, do we not know, do we expect it to change, or are we pretty sure that that number will remain the same?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll have a go at that again because I was part of that, establishing that. Basically, what we do just before the audit is we look at the capital projects that were to be funded from reserves and what those projects cost. Keeping in mind that the first thing that we always do is use the grants that are available to us. They are the first thing that we use. The second thing that we use would be reserves. So the actual transfer that we have done right now is based on the capital costs of the projects that were to be funded that way as it is right now. We might find another accrual that we have to do, but we never take out more out of reserves than what we need, because that would be counterintuitive, because then you just put it back into the reserves.
Okay. No, and one of the main questions is the last question of it was, I noticed under the parkland dedication fee, we'd proposed last year, there's a number of, I think it was about $120,000 to come out of the parkland, and I see that it was only 21,000 actually came out of it. And I see that this year we're suggesting to take out 129,000. So that was one of my questions. I just wanted to see if that might change. And I know as part of Bill 23, we have to take 60% of that money out each year now to spend. I think it's a new government initiative as part of the Bill 23. Yeah, and I think last year, yeah, it was 136,500 that was called to be taken out, but it just seems very low. So that was what I was asking. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor. The purchase of the land was not happened last year. That is going to happen this year. That's what. Thank you.
Thanks, Manish.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, just a couple follow-ups for people's information, because there are people due on council and people in the public. It used to be, and I've been around long enough, unfortunately, that every $25,000 represented basically a 1% tax increase in our budget, in our municipal budget. That may be 30,000 now. Is that what it is? So it's 30,000. So let me put in clarification in terms of what Councillor Nash was saying, that we've estimated a 6% tax increase. If you take 30 and divide it into the 242,000 shortfall that we have on top of the 6%, that's 8%, not 4%. So if we were to pass this all just as it is, that would be a 14% tax increase, not a 10 or 12, right? Hopefully, am I correct there, Mark? Thank you. The second thing is, when it comes to debt financing, and again, I've been around too long. We had a strategy some 6 years ago or so to borrow assets and finance them over the life of the asset versus trying to have all taxpayers pay for a new culvert right now. And I think that was a great strategy when interest rates were 1 and 1.5% and 2%. So a lot of our loans are very low interest. They may be coming off the books now, but they're low interest. I think that, just as a comment, the world has changed unbelievably in the last year. So that's 1 or 2%, is now 6 and 7 and 8%. You start financing stuff over at 8%. When we don't know that a year from now that 8% isn't 3% again, or 4% or whatever, but we're obviously near the top of the curve. The US interest rate went up 0.25% this morning, but they only did it because banks are starting to fail. So I think my comment is, we as a council, the government side here, have to be very, very, very careful in terms of what we spend and what we finance, because we may be encumbering far more on our municipality than we think. When I realized that we have the 3rd lowest tax rate in the whole area, and I'm not embarrassed by that at all, but those are just some realities that I think it's threatening in my own Barbara and everyone needs to understand it. Thank you.
If I might, Mr. Mayor, just to finish off, I just wanted to thank the treasurer, Manish. Thank you very much. I know I'd asked a question about the loans, and I know you'd sent out a chart to us. So thank you very much for sending that out. It really helped, which showed when our loans are maturing. And I know we have loans maturing basically, with the exception of one of them, 2029, I believe, through 2037. And the interest rates range from 2.25% to 5.9%. So I really appreciate you sending that. It really gave some good insight into our almost $3 million loans we have now. So thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Are there any other questions about these first 6 pages? Okay, sounds like not. So we can take a look at the, I guess, at the operating and capital budgets that are, the operating budget is attachment A. What I would ask, I think, is this. I mean, we can go down the list, and if people have significant questions or comments about any of these, I would just caution you, given the amount of time that we have. There's a lot of detail here, and I don't want to get to the situation where we've covered about 5 pages and at 6 o'clock or something. So please, if the amount is not material, let's not quibble about it. If it's if there's something, or the budget proposal is sufficiently different from last year's budget, or the expenditure was much lower or something, and you don't understand why, those are legitimate questions. But I guess what we like to do is just kind of get, sort of a comfort level as far as people's understanding of what these various things are. And you can ask questions on something that doesn't make any sense, that you don't understand. So if I were to just suggest, let's start at the general government group. Anything down there that anybody wants to question, or Councilor Woods?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The first one that kind of jumped right out at me was the admin legal expenses. We spent $55,000
What line item is it?
16-120.
Thank you.
We budgeted last year 20,000, we spent 55 doing the quarter, and potential proposal is 30,000. Realistically, we should double that, I think. In all honesty, I mean, I don't know what we spent this year so far, but our legal expenses are going up.
Would you like to comment, Madam CIO?
I'll keep the mic on. Thanks, that is a good observation. The first round of budget discussions, we were modest here. There were a couple of legal expenses related to one Tambian's homes. And a couple other that were somewhat out of the norm for the municipality of Whitestone. Will we experience that again? I don't know. But there were also some HR expenses that were also out of the norm. And I think council got an overview of what legal expenses were. So we're happy to boost that if that makes sense to council. It puts more pressure on the operating budget, but there has to be a bit of a reality check. The other thing we looked at is actuals for the past few years. And, tried to do a little bit of a comparison and, was 2022 a very unusual year? Possibly. But it's hard to predict what's going to happen. So if that's a request to increase that, then we'll make note.
So how are we gonna do this? Like Councilor Woods suggested this be increased, I guess. Are we just gonna note it and it comes back, or are we gonna say, okay, it was in agreement to increase? How do we?
My suggestion is that we just simply flag them, like what I'm doing on my copies. I'm just putting an asterisk beside it because it looked like there was something that the subject needs to be revisited, and I'm hoping that what would happen is that staff would, because we could spend a lot of time debating what that should be and not, and the reality is we probably don't have the detailed information in front of us to come up with a number, to replace it with. So I would suggest that we just highlight things that are areas of concern to council, and we'll pick them up in the next meeting. We'll pick it whenever we have some responses. Is that fair? Okay. Anything else on this first page? I'm on page 7 of 27 here at under general government. Councilor Nash.
Yeah, I have several of them here, so I guess I'll just start at the top and kind of work through them. Just under 16-100 admin salaries. There's actually no problem with the number that's proposed, but I know for the council items above, we have health benefits, travel, and I'm just wondering if it might make sense for staff to look at under admin salaries that we put benefits like health and dental or whatever to be in or just do some sections to it, just a suggestion. So that it can be showing salaries versus the benefits. Under item 16, some of my numbers aren't huge increases, but I think $1,000 here, $2,000 there, do that to 20 or 30 lines before you know it, you're up 60 or 70,000. So I just had under line 16-106, postage. It looked like we're only adding $100 from last year, so I said, why don't we say $12,000? Just assuming everything costs more to mail out these days. And I know in one of the opening pages, we talked about insurance increases about 10% or so. So under line item 16-107, I know we'll only put in about 1,000 extra, which is a little 5%. So I'd recommend that number go from 29,000 to 32,000. And then line item 16-120, Councilor Woods already spoke about it. I've suggested 60,000, but I think that's similar to what Councilor Woods said when he said double it. And then I also had line 16-131 HR contingency, and I know we said that we'd estimated that very modestly too. So I've said 40,000 versus 20,000. And then when we get to the bottom of those general government, I know we all want to see the internet get better and speeds increase and everything. And I see that in 2022, there was 3,225 spent as a line item 16.162. And this year we're only budgeting 2,000, so I've said maybe put that at 3,500. If it comes in under that, great. But I know normally you don't go in reverse for bids. And then there's two main things I've done on the last item, which was the asset management. And I know I'll have to talk about it further as we go further into discussions. I had recommended a contribution of $100,000 instead of the 277, but what I've suggested is when we get further along, there's an expense for the pool and wellness center. And as we don't know if that's going to happen this year, I'm suggesting that under the asset management, we make a subsection, reserve line for the pool of 250,000. So out of the asset management, 100,000 would be just general asset management, and 250,000 would be a reserve for the pool. And whenever that check has to be written, if it's next year, we already have the money to decide. Those are my observations and comments under general government.
Okay,
Barb might want to speak to the reserve because that's from the asset management plan.
Okay, I don't know if Barb wanted to comment. I was gonna say that I understand where Councillor Nash is going with creating a pool reserve. The pool is not our asset, so it doesn't come under asset management, but there could be a reserve for it. A separate reserve for it. I don't know. Did you have any comment you wanted to make about that, or you or Manish?
The two, yes, you can set up a reserve for virtually anything as long as it's not a restricted controlled legislative reserve. You could split, if council wished to do so, you could split out the asset management reserve. In this budget, we currently have the pool $250,000 capital expenditure for the pool. We have that one suggested for debt financing right now. It's been done successfully by other municipalities. So right now that would be the funding source for that. To reduce the contributions, this is the main contributions to reserves that we have in the budget right now. To reduce that down to $100,000, basically sets it at $100,000 for future years until we can gradually increase it again. And I think somewhere in the report, I'm not sure exactly where, we talked about the targets that were set for those contributions to reserves in the asset management plan. If you cut the amount of money you're putting into your savings, that's going to affect what you spend in future years.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Treasurer, go ahead.
Actually, for 2023, the reserve should be $327,526 for asset management. Due to the pressure, we reduced 50,000 of that. Already it's been reduced. So it is standing at $277,526 as of this budget.
So it's actually a lower number than what's reported there.
What is in the government in the asset management plan?
Okay. Yeah, I wondered about that because I noticed that there was a different number somewhere else. Yeah. Okay. Well, all right, thanks. Anything else under this section before we move to the next one? All right, so, Councillor,
Sorry, yeah, line item 16-110, office supply. 2021 was spent 10,600. The budget is 9,000. Last year, spent 12,600, nearly 13,000, now we budgeted 9 again. Why are we expecting office supplies to go down by that amount? I think it should be less than 12,600. Something.
Yep.
We bought a lot of pencils or something, I don't know what's going on there.
Thank you, I can speak to that. With the renovation of the office and our records management system putting in place, we spent more than we anticipated last year. So we are just trying to be frugal and be careful with what we spend this year. We're in good with the supplies and the things you can see under office supplies. So our plan is to stay within that 9,000 unless something happens.
So we were 10.5 2 years ago, that's before we did that. So why would we go back to 9? We've got just as many, back maybe more employees. Anyway, I don't think it's
I think the answer is we were trying to look at every line item and see if there's ways that we as staff can manage our spending just a little differently. I get what you're saying, that, you know, things cost more. And maybe we will be over budget, but we're going to attempt to stay on budget this year and manage that.
My final comment on this is high-speed internet. Councilor Nash spoke to it a little bit. Again, I don't want to get into a long debate on it. But we have in here the Starlink system. It's the Ferrari of internet service that we can get in rural areas. I've been told by people in the industry that we can get something called nano beams. And I look up the cost. You get 4 nano beams for $895, and you can hook them at the library and the office and the York landfill, all the places. It's a 15-kilometer radius, and I've got all the specs for it. But anyway, I think we have to look very seriously as opposed to having 6 or 8, $120 here, $190 here, $150 there, and using the Starlink that could perhaps better serve, for instance, the library than we've got now, where we have problems. And look into the whole Starlink nano beams and that sort of thing. So I don't understand. I'm not a super technical guy. I don't want to hear that it can't be done because I've been told by 2 people it can be. So I at least want to run it out. So thank you very much. And that goes for, I want to talk about the internet in any of the accounts. It could go up to the roads garage and replace what's being done there, etc. And I'm getting thumbs up. So anyway, that's what I say. That's nice to be in. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. There is an answer to that, which I won't give you right now, but we will have a report, hopefully for council in a while, about sort of the whole subject of the future of internet. And there is an interim plan, which you will also, I don't want to get into today, but there's an interim plan that will address some of the broader term things that we can do. The goal, of course, is to try to maximize the available internet for everybody. Until we ultimately have a real fiber connections to all these buildings, in which case the issue will go away. And the cost will go down too, probably. Anyway, all right, so could we move on to protection to persons and property? Is there anything in those ones that you want to raise?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just overall, I spent quite a bit of time just going through all the expenses. And when I say some of the numbers, I don't think it might make sense to some people overall, but when I did, I think I got to quite a bit of cost savings overall by still adding some other items. So I just wanted to say that if some of what I'm saying, if we go through these, seems to jump out. But when I went through it, I noticed the new fire recruits 16-202 was increased. Last year we'd spent 10,200. The year before we were 4,100. That actually mentioned something to the fire chief about it and said, I'd recommend maybe we put it at $5,000 or sorry, $15,000. And I think if I'm correct, through the fire chief, he said that would be allotted to train if we needed to, or new equipment for 2 people, I think it was.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, we used to be able to buy a bunker suit for our firefighters for $1,300. Now they're $2,500. Boots and everything else went up for our new recruits. When we get new recruits, some of the old equipment can be used, some of it can't. So if you cut it, this means we may or may not be able to bring on 2 new firefighters, 2 extra firefighters. So it's, a decision council will have to make and work around it.
Okay, thanks, Bob. And then the main thing that I'm suggesting, again, this is where I said people might think it doesn't make sense right now, but when we get to the end of the budget, I think it will. I know for the fire pump reserve, I know that we need a new fire pump thing that's talked about. We order one now, it might come in 2025, and it's gonna cost about $500,000 or $600,000. And right now, in the pump reserve, we have $270,000. So I've actually proposed to increase that number from $30,000 to $100,000 this year. So that when the fire truck comes due, if we do the same thing next year, we won't be taking out a big loan for it. We're knowing about this, I think they can't be over 25 years old, from what I understand. I don't think we've been putting enough money into that reserve to finance what we need and what we need to order this year. So I'm proposing that number be increased to realistic numbers so that when the pumper's here, we have money there. So I've recommended $100,000 on. And then just a couple of really small items. It's more item 16-239 is building maintenance. I can't believe that we can maintain buildings for $995. So I think that's a good job.
It was a good job.
So I'm just saying.
Turn the light on, I did a good job.
I'm just saying, maybe we want to see that at a couple $1,000s. And I've done the same thing on building maintenance for station number 2. I'm not sure which station number 2 is, but we have $316. I'm sure there might be little bits of work that need to be done, so I said, why don't we make that's line item 16-259, $1,000. And that was it.
Yeah, I guess we will come to the fire pump reserve. That's not a reserve for the fire truck, is it? Okay, so you see here's the thing, the question that we should deal with this when we come to capital, because the question that has to be asked is what's already in the reserve. I don't know that we'll get to that later, I think, but that's
171,000 years or
that's all that's there. Okay, all right, well, that's fine. I'm not arguing with you that we should put a star beside it, but that'll come out of the discussion around. It's a capital part, that's a capital purchase, no matter how you skin it, we're gonna finance it somehow or other, right? So
So we're going to discuss it on.
we're gonna discuss it later, I think, is what I'm saying. We have to then look at sort of how do we do that? How do we finance it? So anything else under,
You must,
yes, Councilor.
16-222 fire vehicle equipment reserve, thank God, which is fine. What is that for? Is that for your pickup truck or something, Bob, or what?
No, it's a different, it's for replacing lights and bumpers and anything, the winch that has to be replaced or sent out for service. Stuff like that.
Okay. Okay, helipad maintenance, 16,260, we spent $2,000 last year, I guess. That was one time shot and with nothing in this year, nothing to do. Okay. That's all I had on on that, and we're still on what, page 8 on the line.
Well, it goes to the bottom of, well, I mean, we can do the whole protection of persons and properties if you want to keep going down to the end of that.
Okay, well, I have this one, the building department truck maintenance. Spent $7,300. And we've got it at 4,000,
Yeah.
so what would make you think we're gonna? Which I think that's 16,290,
Yeah,
building department, 2,300, budget 75, we spent 73. And I guess we must have spent a smart, because we're only gonna spend 4 next year on an older truck. What year is that truck, by the way? Do we know?
Oh, I can speak to the budget amount. Dave, do you know what year that truck is? 19?
That is correct.
19 was.
So in January of 2022, there was a little accident with that vehicle and it cost about $5,000
Oh,
to have it fixed. So it's in really good shape. It's just a matter of oil changes, maintenance, tire changes. So the building inspector felt that with help from Dave, that 4,000 would be sufficient.
don't try to sell it on a car van and. Now we'll go down to different.
And actually, I just wanted to say one thing if I could, Mr. Mayor. When we just said the year of it, David, I really appreciate it when you'd sent out that listed the years of the trucks and stuff. It really helps out. So thank you for sending that. And it gives a little better education to me on what truck is what and what year they are. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Mayor. When I sent that out, each is updated immediately. So from now on in the general ledger, all information that will come to you and through our budgets and our expenses forms, all that information will be there and reference. I feel they paint a clear picture for everyone.
No, thank you very much. And then my last question under protection for the persons and property. I noticed line item 16-272 said biosphere monitoring. I know we haven't budgeted anything yet, and I believe that's because we've put that under a different line item somewhere else now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. The first time biosphere monitoring came to the municipality with under this particular set of accounts. It has been since moved to environmental services, and you'll see that under landfill. So it's the same item 16484, and you'll see an item in there.
Thank you, Michelle.
okay, thanks. Anything else under protection of persons and property? Okay, can we then move to the transportation services block, which starts 2/3 of the way down on page 9 and goes to halfway down page 11. Is our roads and various things. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, a couple, not 10 here. 16,350, ditching. Wooden services. Budgeted 14 last year, we spent 13, we spent 14,000, and this year it's you. What's going on there? I think we have ditching or it's moved somewhere.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I would like to thank everyone on council for approving the excavator. We no longer have to rent an excavator to do ditching. So that line item has been taken out.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
We're pretty smart when you let us do our job. That's good, thank you. 16,375, near and dear to my heart, gravel, summer name. Budgeted at 180, we spent 179,460, God bless. Now we say that it's going up, I thought you said 15 or 17%, if I heard it right. And if that's true, we got it at 190 instead of 180. That's not a lot of increase in gravel. So, and I don't want to see us have a asset management plan. And I know it's in fact it's around 26% of our roads are in poor shape, and I know that's a statement that some people don't like. But anyway, I don't want us to see take one step backward on our own roads with gravel. So that needs the property to take them, that's instead of 190, 200 or whatever, but I don't want us to say we're not putting as much gravel on the road because of cost. Because I think that I got it wrong.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Mayor. It is near and dear to my heart as well. And I had to have some sort of conservative estimate on that. So we have our tender closing very soon. The end of the month, next week, I believe. It's closing. So we should have that information rather quickly. What has happened in the past, which has helped us, is it's done crushing a year or two ahead of time. And the piles sitting in place at those costs.
Yeah.
Previous year's costs. So they have a new person representing the company that is typically low bid. And that person had a difficult time answering those questions, what they had in the stockpile or when it was prepared for us. If it is in a stockpile, it was crushed at a previous year, we did get to enjoy those.
So we'll have a price on the gravel for the budget's finalized.
Absolutely.
And so that 190 might become 200 or 210 or it's not going down, I guess. From one.
You're absolutely right. The cost of gravel it hasn't changed. It's still dirt cheap. It's the cost of fuel that fills the machines that come to do all the work, prepare it and bring it to us.
Okay.
So absolutely right, that cost has gone up. So we should see in the next week, and I do hope that it's in line with what's prepared.
Okay, thank you. 16,399 boat launch. And 3,800 last year, we budgeted 3,500, and we got 35 in the year again. Boat launches are pretty important, came up during the election several times, and with people who are concerned, not only of Wabash County, but all our boat launches. I think the general feeling of most of the candidates election anyway, and I would say perhaps the majority of people on council, is that we should be investing more in our boat launches, be they docks if we can, our lake should be inviting people, and we should be putting more money. Now, of course, putting more money in itself doesn't do anything. You've got to have a plan to go with that money that you're going to spend. So I would think that should increase. And I think that staff needs to look at our boat and prioritize it, which might not do. In terms of that, we took last year a gooseneck and we put a 15,000, I think it was $15,000 dock in. We took responsibility for that. It was well appreciated by most people up, all people up on gooseneck. Well, most, and worked out very well. So, but there are many other boat launches. We've got the issue down at the end of Farming's Road, where we've all been through, whether it be access or not, but the parking lot at the end of it. And I think we're heading towards more public parking down there. I have not figured a big public parking down there, but I think again, it's an investment. So I would ask staff to take a look at the boat launches and increase the amount. They can come up with a plan based, because we have a report of that last year on all the boat launches that we've got. Budget.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for putting that out. We spent a fair bit of time each year effort serving the municipality doing work, which has been well received. That number that we have in place, I believe, will continue that trend. We also have a line item, if went all the way over to 19 of 27. 19 of 27 in copper, we have Farley Road boat launch. In there at 11,000. So that,
Okay, good.
so we're spreading it around, not doing everything all at once, but we're giving attention to every one of our boat launches. And we're doing it in a systematic planned approach. We're not doing everything all at once, but everybody is getting something. And I think we will still be able to serve our public and improve our boat launch services. I think this is a reasonable number with those two numbers put together. We also have a report coming very soon on the update on the boat launches. boat launches and potential boat launches that have been asked over time. It is a fairly large topic.
That is, that's why we need more than 3,500 bucks. That's my point.
Sorry, just to remind you that things like docks are capital assets. Okay, you don't, if you replace a dock, you don't spend that every year. You spend it once for 10 years, hopefully. No, but I'm saying that this is the $3,500, as I understand it, and perhaps Dave can confirm this. This is for work that our staff would do at the landing to grade it out or anything like that. That's something that doesn't involve a major construction project where we're, you know, dynamiting rock or cutting down trees or doing a whole bunch of things like that. Maybe have a contractor involved. It's the maintenance of the boat launch that our people are able to do. That's what would be in the operating budget, and that some of that would have to be done every year because, you know, the water comes up, washes the stuff away, gravel gets, you know, dissipated and so on. But I'm just trying to caution everybody that, you know, if you're talking about some major thing that becomes a capital project and is covered under the asset management, should be covered under the asset management plan, at least ultimately.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may add to that, these numbers that you see, let's say 3,500, if you go into these boat launches, you'll look around to a variety of boat launches, and I think you might expect that there's been more value added than $3,500. There's been quite a bit more value added than $3,500. This year, we have an excavator that we will have on hand. Other years we've had on rents that we moved around. So that with our equipment, that we have our equipment and our staff, they amplify this number quite a bit. This number does give us bare gravel and some signage to maintain these launches, and we do maintain them. We go around each one. The council does hear about it. When we're at a boat launch, you generally hear that we try and get in and out quickly as quickly as possible and make it as pretty as possible so you hear good things. That's the idea behind it. The capital improvements do get addressed. They're a larger undertaking, which we plan to with Farley's. We try to maximize our property to serve the public, that continue to meet our responsibilities with that property, as well as address the general public.
Okay.
I might just, there's actually a bunch of, may I say something or like that? I too agree that these are very important. And I know back in 2021, I think there was 4,400 spent in last year, 3,800. And if I'm right, a load of gravel is about $750. So the 3,500 will get us about 4 or 5 loads of gravel to spread around half a dozen boat launches. So I fully agree that I think that number should be higher. I have it written down as, I have lots of other comments, but I have that as $20,000. I think each year we should go to each boat launch that we have and put 2 or 3 loads of gravel down at each boat launch and grade it out, be it the launch area or the parking area. So I've suggested a number of $20,000. And I think investing in these boat launches where a lot of our taxpayers use and a lot of water access properties use. I think it's a good number that we should increase. So I had $20,000, but sorry to cut you off at that.
I've got just 2 or 3 others, and then I'll go on to page 10. Tandem International. I know we got 4 international, so I didn't get one confused with the other. 2 years ago, 21. This is maintenance 21.7, budgeted 8. That's 16. Now we're budgeting 9. Why are we spending 21,000, 16,000 and budgeting 9? And then again, the truck's getting over.
Oh, thank you very much.
That's, I'm sorry, you get the line items?
Yes, I did. Mr. Mayor, that is our oldest truck. It's 2008 International. When I did arrive, it needed some love. Yeah. So that truck is got an excellent setup for us. It's got no after treatment to speak of. So it's quite reliable as far as diesel goes. more reliable than the newer ones, lower maintenance than the newer ones. The newer ones require this after treatment to meet emissions. We're required to meet the emissions of 2008, and it seems to be rather efficient. It's a little bit better on fuel. It's got a good setup for what we do. We use that as a backup fuel all the time, and we haul quite a bit of gravel in the summer with it. When I did arrive, the box was rotten out of it. In one corner, the tires were not good. It did have it needed a lot of love. To do that all at once, the things that were critical to make it safe, they were addressed immediately, and they showed a higher cost. Now we've addressed a lot of the other cosmetic things.
Okay, so you're confident on 9,000?
It is different, it's a much,
And the truck's not.
it's a much better truck. It's a different truck than it was, and the cost of maintenance on it have diminished, it will continue to
Okay.
diminish on it. The newer trucks are not the same, they have that after treatment, which is. It's a large additional cost, and it does create a lot of reliability problems.
Okey-dokey, greater maintenance, 16,421, same thing. Spent 27,000, budgeted 30, spent 35. Now this year, we're gonna spend 24. That makes a lot of sense. Next line, same thing, spent 13,000 on gas, budgeted 13, spent 18 nearly on gas. Now we're gonna go back to 14. Those numbers don't make sense, but. You know, why is, my car, the longer I get, maintenance goes down on it. My experience is the exact opposite. But anyway, and again, I'm not trying to be smart aleck, I'm just saying, those numbers don't make any sense.
What we have is we have that
Could you
grader,
explain it to me?
well, the grader had planned work, it had a major service, and when I did arrive, it needed front end, it had problems with the front end and the turntable, as well as the rear end on it. Those are typical problems on the John Deere that I was familiar with. It was recommended that we replace it. Those were addressed, so those problems were addressed, and the machine is now reliable. Last year, we spent more, we added more because we had new tires. Tires are 12,000 for that. We don't need new tires this year. We don't have a major maintenance program on it. It doesn't have anything outstanding that needs to be addressed. As we stand right now, it doesn't. Some of the fuel, we have different pieces of equipment. We have the excavator, we have our backhoe and our backup backhoe. Those will carry some of the load too. So the spread of the fuel, each piece of equipment will be running as well. So it's not just, we just don't grow in fuel, we don't have enough people to put the seats everywhere. So that's.
And you don't need as many vehicles. Thank you.
One more start.
Okay, Councillor Nash.
Yeah, thank you. Just in general, I have quite a few flags here, but I think Councillor Nan picked up on some of them. And what I'm flagging here is really some of the maintenance costs and fuel costs on the equipment. And I know we have to, they have to be driven, they have to be used. The more work we do, the more cost, the more maintenance we do, the more cost. So I understand that, but I think when I just went through it, I saw quite a few numbers to me that seemed like they were low. And I know last year we went quite over budget on a lot of items related to gas and maintenance. So I'm proposing a number of items in here that I think might be more in tune to where they might end based on last year. And I know if I'm correct, I think the first line item I'm going to talk to is 16-332 culverts. And I believe we have a very large stockpile of culverts. And I know we spent $1,000 in 2021, 4,000 last year. Now we're budgeting 6,500. So I've suggested maybe 3,000 because I know we have, again, quite a large stockpile. And under line item road sweep, or sorry, hard top 16-360. I know the guys go out, or the crews, go out and do the hot patch in a lot of areas. And last year was 10,000, we're budgeting 8,000. I know upkeep of the roads are vital. And the hot patch assists that. So I've suggested maybe we increase that to $15,000 so the crews can go out and hot patch a little bit more, keep the roads in good shape. When it comes to the gravel, this summer maintenance gravel 16-375. I know last year we were 179. Now we're budgeting 190. I'm suggesting, even though I'm in favor of investing in our roads and doing a lot of road maintenance, given the budget we have this year and constraints, and I know there's a large stockpile of gravel still left from last year at the works yard. I'm suggesting that number be reduced to 150,000 for this year, only because I know there's a large stockpile. When it comes to, I'm just trying to, some of them are flag to, the turnaround upgrades. I'm not sure where the turnaround upgrades are. Item 16-398. 2021, it was 3,300. Last year it was 3,000. Now we're budgeting 2,500. So I recommended 3,500. We've already spoken about the boat launch item 16-399. I've suggested 20,000. And then when we come through the maintenance, tandem Freightliner maintenance, it was 31,000 last year.
I'm sorry, Councillor Nash, but we don't have time to go, we just want to raise the items. We can't, we're going to run out of time. Every person speaks to the same items. These have already been raised by Councillor Lamb, and what we're going to do is the manager of Public Works will take a look at these things and either come back and say, yeah, I believe the number is correct for the following reason, or take your suggestion, but we got to move on.
I think we have the right in a budget meeting to go through numbers and comment. Mr. Councillor Lamb did not comment on it.
He commented on the Freightliner,
Gravel, I did.
and he commented on gravel. I realize you disagree with him, and I heard what you said, but
More money. So am I supposed to keep my mouth quiet if I say I want less? That's not.
no, I'm just pointing out to you, we are going to run out of time, and then we won't get finished what we intend to do today.
So why don't we just call the meeting now and close it off if we can't comment on anything? This is what we're here for. We're here to debate and comment on
Yeah,
stuff. So
but I'm asking you to use your time wisely, please, and there's
the time wise,
there are.
true. I'm trying to comment on items I think can help our budget, Mr. Mayor.
Move it along, please.
Talk to the budget, George, come on. But he shouldn't repeat.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He is repeating.
Hold on, he has a point. I said I want more gravel. His point is he wants less.
Okay, I
That point. Well, otherwise, what's he gonna do? Say, well, I wanted to do it last time, but the mayor told me I couldn't say something? Come on, this has gotta be done right. So it's a very important to taxpayers. Right? This is where the rubber hits the road.
And when I went through the budget, I was really concerned of how much debt we're going through, which is why I spent so much time going through it all. Because I think we're gonna find ourselves in a very hard situation really, really quick unless people put time into looking at it. So I'll continue going through my items. So 16-402. I'd suggested 32,000 instead of 28,000. 16-403 for fuel. I've suggested 18,500. For item 16-403 for fuel. For item 16-404 single axle Freightliner maintenance, I've suggested 19,000. 404-1, I've suggested 15,000 for fuel. And Freightline 16-404-3. I've suggested 20,000 only because the number last year was 20,000, but maybe there is a repair done there, so it's not needed. I've just tried to flag items that seemed low from previous years. Councillor Lamb's already spoken to 16-409, so I won't repeat that. I just had 15,000. And then the grader maintenance, again, 14-421, I had a 30,000, but you might have already explained that, David. And then grader fuel, I had an 18,000, this is item 16-423. And then one of the main ones, which is a new item, so there's no number, Ionda excavator maintenance. We've estimated at $2,000, but when I went back and looked at the report in September, when we were purchasing the excavator, we had anticipated the maintenance for the first few years at $6,000. So I believe that should be 6,000 and not 2,000. Just to keep in line with what the report had said. And then the last one is just a question in regards to, there's a new item, which is fleet insurance for 29,000. Where was that item before? It says XXXXX fleet insurance, 29,000. Was that somewhere else, or is this an additional insurance that we didn't have before?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I asked that fleet insurance be pulled out of our maintenance, so in previous years, it was in the maintenance cost, so you'll see the truck and the maintenance, where I asked that pull out the insurance, and we should also pull out the licensing. And then you can see true cost. It paints a better picture than we spent all this money on maintenance when part of it was for insurance, and part of it was for the license requirements.
It does. Thank you very much. And the very last question I have, which I don't know if it's really under works, it's under loans and dependitures, which is part of this. So my only comment on that is right now we've proposed, it says XXX debt financing 2023. And we have a number of 36,946.27. And I know that's for the $663,000 loan that we're recommending, which I think should be much less. I think we shouldn't be financing just the excavator and find cost savings, but I'm doing quick math, a $700,000 loan, 663 of 5% would almost be that number, the 36,946. So is this because we're taking it out partway through the year, so the interest number is not the full number? And what would the full number be if it was a full year? And what are we recommending for amortization of this 663,000?
Is anybody going to answer the question, or are we taking under advisement?
The loan will be approximately, we are going to do is 663,870 for the current year. There will be a facility expense for last year, it is not been debentured at, so it will be, total will be $852,606, and the interest rate calculated is 6.5% for 8 months only.
Did you just say, sorry, 8.5%? 6.5, and how many years? Sorry,
It's only 8 months.
8 months.
It's only interest, not a principal.
No, but how long are we recommending the almost $700,000 loan for?
Once the OCL close, it will be maybe 15 years. But I don't have the interest rate with the principal amount as of now.
Okay, no, that's what I was wondering, how long we're gonna be borrowing money at 6% for. Thank you.
The answer was 15 years up there. Okay.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments regarding transportation? If not, let's move on to environmental services. We have environmental, no, that's a separate section. Okay, let's do environmental, anything in environmental.
Sorry, 16444. Road grant, right? I think this is where you declare, is this the road grant?
Yeah.
Oh, so you leaving?
Yeah, I'll leave.
I thought you said you would, I have to run it back, I'm for the back, so I won't talk very loud.
I'll go outside. Not to the bathroom, don't even get it.
This is the
So which item is this?
16440, what was that? Budgeted 83, or budget is 87.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay, sorry, we're just,
Spent 86. Put a 3% increase through again, where if 2 more roads come in, that'll take up part of the 3%. I think it should be more than 3%. I think again, when you say gravel and culverts and all those sorts of things. Otherwise, this is a decrease on the road grant at 3%. So I'm going to suggest that it be 6% instead of 3%. So that would be money request. I still think that's light, but it's more than a 3%. Otherwise, we're taking grants down. And if you get 2 or 3 more roads will fly. It's not taking that into account. I thought in previous years, we built a certain percentage in for new roads coming in, would be not far.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that we looked at that last year,
I think
actually.
we would have said 1% for new road and, but anyway,
I think so. We can go back and look.
I'm suggesting it be 6%. Over last year, so 6% on top of 87,649. Thank you. Sorry, I missed that.
I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me, but if you look at if you recall the last time that we did an analysis, there were a number of years when the road grant wasn't increased at all, so. But I guess. What I'm wondering is if staff did any analysis to see where we were in terms of. You know, I can't tell from this how much of it, in fact, is additional grants versus additional people getting grants versus the increase, how much of that, you know, what we spent last year. So it's a little hard to know. I got the impression from the treasurer's earlier answer that the 3% was sort of to cover the whole thing.
Well, I'm still requesting 6%, and there was a 0% increase, I think, only in 1 year. This program's been in place for 10, 11 years at least. There were years that it was increasing at 10%. So we've had I think there was 1 year where I unsuccessfully tried to increase it, but anyway, again, my request is that we make it 6%.
So, but what you want to do is you want to increase X and Y by 3%, and you only want to increase the total,
I want, if a road got $100 last year and they put in an application this year, I want them to get $106. I don't care what it was.
so you want to increase X and Y by 6%. Yeah.
The increase in road grant be 6%. That's all, that's just a request. I thought we were going through requests.
Okay, no, I'm trying to understand what it is you're asking. All right, well, all right. Okay, so what else? Is there anything else in this? Okay, can we move on to environmental services, please?
And ask, Eva, can you ask Councilor Nash to come back in? We were going to leave you out for another hour, but we decided to let you back in.
So we could just take a quick break at 5.
Where did we get the capital, are we?
I don't want it this way,
No,
but
I mean, some people have to leave at 6 o'clock, am I right? Isn't that what I heard?
I don't know if Councilor Ram is actually.
No, I'm going to join the meeting, but I don't need to be there at 6. We've got till 6:30.
We got till 6:30.
These ladies have a library board meeting at 6, should at least go with the library portion before. So they can get.
Okay, well, the reason I'm I'm asking is that the suggestion was that we would have a break, and I was hoping that we would have been finished this part of the budget, and then we could move on to the library and capital and the rest of the time we have. And we can take the break, but I'm concerned that we're not gonna finish, right? That's.
Another meeting.
You just need 5.
No, we can.
I just need 5 minutes.
Go get it.
I'm sorry? Yeah, okay, let's take a break then, and you know, because we're approaching that, we can.
And then maybe you could move on to the library, to skip and go to the library budget if they do that.
Yeah, but we can probably finish. We're getting to the end of this section. Yeah, 5 minutes, 5.
Yeah, we're on page. I think, going on there, but I think it's that, you know, this is still. I don't have as many. We only have to give them 15, but the rest of them, I have.
I think.
I have 3 or 4 items, so I think we're just getting pretty much, you know, like.
Yeah, I think we're getting close to the end of this. I'm just concerned about
them go forward.
Yeah, before we do the capital budget, we'll let them do their part, so.
Discussion about comments for the policy happens. Now,
I don't. A lot of people are, let's pick.
after one. Yeah, so. Yeah, it is a library. I'm not, you know, but this is what you think. I would put it. So, especially when you have some books, you know, differently. So budget meeting. So, I've heard that.
Hold on, so we're all in vision growing. I was watching it.
No, I know, there's me, sorry, I'm gonna be writing to my cities, so it's their water, they are. Sorry, I was. I'm in it, right? And I have to go and talk about. Well, you mean. You know.
Well, I mean, the first. No,
Yeah.
all I'm saying. I was older, we did. I think that's where.
You know where we are.
Yeah, they have.
And I remember we watched. All has that's the. And that's the chocolate for that hill on Sean on. So I did read our.
Well, I saw the starting.
Yeah, we have good for 3 days.
Yeah, you got one. It's like fun.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, go. I think my work. We but it is not that years. You have to be honest. What I have is actually other. It's natural science. That's going. And we. Oh, no. With these kind of efficiencies. There's like similar. That's where. Yeah, and I'm sure you know. I started considering next week, relate to an afternoon. We make it better because our budget should have to do it. Like in line, and it's getting out. Without even this. I think we do. Clear rate and that and the people all showing up. That are on the other side of the village, right? They can get all the stuff on the tower. Oh, that's. Yeah. Now she see, she's. You know, see, and then. So this stuff, we're looking here, right? I know he was giving them million trees, so. Well, our tissue wants to be on that, right? That way, right? And because. Legal, that's certain, right, then you show this here, right, I have to take one more. You might. Yeah, then, yeah, we have this, so, but. And actually, yeah, a little bit of money, but they know technology. File things, that right. Right. Not, we had nothing to tell us even. So. Oh, look at that snow. Oh, in Moses. Oh, wait, so rolling, but not. We go forward today. Oh, that's good. That's cool. Trying to figure out, I don't know. So I understand. Well, I've been questions, well, because I was still understanding. I was saying to whispering to George. I will be doing all the things that months. They budgeted things for a certain reason, so if you're asking, why is this lower than last year, or why is this? The day one. So just to sort of it should be this or that's where a little bit to address this because Dave looked at the scripture. Oh, yeah, I'm sure you can think of, and you're not gonna have it my basis to share, you know, because that's much pain. Yeah. Just like the question about the building inspectors. He only worked for us for almost 2 weeks and he had him. Oh, he just felt so bad and so bad. We don't expect another accident. No. Yeah. We have to go. One at a time. Oh, yeah. Reason of tolerance. Then go. Let's go. Yeah. I will go. Let's go. Well, they have the things you have to find. What the works I do contest. Side call. I think that would. No, there's no reason for it at all. Gonna be explained. If there's, you can, thing.
Line. I would like to come back to that.
Oh, no, that's right. Well, I'm done.
I think you have that, but more, because we know it. Gosh. Yeah.
Do you think you could like?
Yeah, I asked George to move to the library right after the break.
Thank you, but
Yeah.
because we were just wondering how we were gonna manage it. We both have to get home in order to get to our computers.
Sure, yeah, I'm Richard. I think that George's intent is to move up to the library and then let you go, we're gonna need another meeting in ways.
Yes.
I have to get gas before the close of production. Or I'll be walking home.
We're, I'll get back to that.
Okay, yeah.
It is me. Have cash. Okay, we want it. I don't. Let him in here. It's always coming back. Big recording. And all our lights are on, moves over, our lights are whatever. Over like get parties. I hear. We'll turn off the second section. Said that's Kathy.
We also have Paul on the line.
You don't have to talk about me. I can hear you.
See that?
I can hear you.
Sorry.
I love that.
Oh my God, what's on this? Who else is on? Who's on? Who else is on?
We can hear everything everyone is saying.
We love you, hon.
I'm going to mute myself. Goodbye.
She can still hear us.
Oh, yeah. I can hear you.
Of course, I'm gonna help yourself. Food, tea.
Have fun. Is that the problem? But I'm not on there.
I'm shut down.
Well, some, God, buyers,
Be careful.
oh, I did it. They said, what's he buying? You went out on their cow. See, more.
Okay, I had it.
But we could hear it.
We had Paul and we heard his dog.
Yeah.
So I realized she wasn't on mute, so I moved her, and Joe said, "Move the dog." Yeah, I let them know you'd be okay to move to the library because we can just move on to the library budget so they can.
Right now? I was gonna, well. I don't know.
They have a meeting at 6 and they
Yeah.
have to go home, get home so they can Zoom from home.
Oh, it's a Zoom meeting, is it?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, I see. I didn't realize that. I thought they were just going across the road.
no,
Be in the library, but now.
Okay, everybody. I think I pulled myself up by the roots here. Okay, everybody, if we could reconvene, folks from the library have to go to a library board meeting. So, I guess what we'll do at this point, so they can leave when they need to, is to go to the library budget, which is, I think it's right at the end. What's that?
page 24.
Okay, page 24 of 27. And so we'll just take a little detour to that one, and then we'll come back to the rest of the operating budget.
24.
Page 24 of 27. Questions about the, unless, Madam Chair or Evie, you want to say something by way of introduction, otherwise I'll just open it up for questions then, about that page. Councillor Lamb.
Well, library board's done a good job, and I'm a rep on it, so, what ends up happening is all this is driven by inflation, isn't the life, and the other thing is because the number of citizens or residents went above 1,000, all our books and everything now we pay more money for than we did for when it was under. That's being driven in here too, so there's very little room, and I know it's a 10 or 11% increase. I think there is an increase of, I think it's 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 days, 2 hours, 2 days. Yeah, so it's a little bit of extra hours as
We're only one, so it's 2 hours.
in July and August, which was a result of surveys when people wanted, when our population goes from 1,000 to 6,000.
So if you speak, in-
Anyway, so.
you speak in here, people on Zoom can.
It's also for a lot of the programming and everything in here is paid for either by donation. For instance, the thrift shop, I think, gave something on with 6,000 or something. And other things, and I know Eva's like a hawk when it comes to grants, things like that, trying to get those, so. I know it seems like a lot, but this is the centerpiece of our community here, and so I fully support it. And excuse me, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nash.
I just have one really quick question. Can somebody elaborate on this, how eat one, why it costs more? I'm a little confused about it.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So not
Eva,
books-
Eva.
Further, closer.
Yeah, closer.
Right. So some of our e-resources, things like our ancestry.com, that kind of thing, our the cost of our website, we have consortium pricing, which is population based. So that includes our catalog, our ebooks, anything digital really. And that did increase when our population went above 1,000. Now, we have that built into our materials line, so that's what's accounting for that raise in our materials line. We haven't actually increased it for inflation over 15 years. So that's something that probably next year we will have to address because we have not increased it appropriately over time.
This is something. I guess the supplier just charging more.
It's consortium pricing for digital resources and the cost of the catalog, not the physical materials. I have not accounted for the inflation of the physical material in here over time.
What's next?
Councillor Nash.
The lighting is there. I know that from a capital standpoint, we did building, did most of the lighting, and then I think panels were coming down or something. And we were going to fix that. That gets fixed, or is all the lighting fixed in the library? Is my question.
Not all of it, no. We worked with Dave at the municipality and we replaced the lighting in the entrance, the old lighting, the fixtures that the covers were falling down from the ceiling. So we replaced the ones in the entrance, but not the ones in the remainder of the library, no.
So is there, again, I expect to ask this question, is there danger? The last thing you want in the library is to have panels from the lighting, from the, what do you call it, fluorescent light falling down. So how much more is left to do, and has that been budgeted for in a capital center?
So what's left to do, I think there's at least another 14 lights that need to be replaced. And I think Dave and I talked about it. We figured it would cost about $3,000. In the first draft of this budget, we had included that, and then we removed it because we were already having to ask for such a large increase.
I think that's a bit of a safety issue, right? So I would suggest we put 3,000 in, and if that's what the figure is, then we get the lights fixed. I know when the panels were coming down, I don't think they struck in, but now that I've talked about it, I really want to see it because it's a safety issue.
We didn't have them bought while people were in the library in the past.
Well, I'm going to suggest that we add that from a capital standpoint or wherever we put it. Fine. Thank you.
There isn't any capital. Am I missing something? There's no capital.
Budget.
You doesn't have
Put it
a-
in the operating.
Municipal. facilities side likely.
Put it in the operating budget then.
Okay,
For $3,000, yeah, you can put it in operating, yeah.
Or what,
Yeah.
is that?
Okay.
Cost?
35.
35. Okay. 4,000, you're the here, it keeps going up, just be quiet and drop the pot. Is that what it is before, or 335? Wherever he feels comfortable, I don't wanna,
35, I think.
okay? 35.
Oh, yes.
Okay? Good.
Okay,
You got more than you asked for. Here you go.
are there other questions about or comments about this budget?
I have one, but it might not be kind of, I noticed somewhere there's some concrete work in the library, was that under concrete? It's not in here.
Can you get closer to the mic if you don't mind, Councillor Nash? Yeah, sorry.
I've seen somewhere when I was reviewing, there's some concrete work at the library, but I don't think it's in yours. I think it's under capital, so never mind. It'll be coming up later.
I guess sorry to prolong this, but I guess the only sort of question I was, or maybe it's more a comment. It occurs to me that this, the library is, bigger than it was. It's a lot busier than it was. It's being used a lot more. And, I guess my concern would simply be, I realize and I do appreciate very much the fact that everybody's trying to be conservative here and not, what with increases in wages and various other things like that are putting up the operating costs over which you have no control. But I guess I would want to make sure that the library has what it needs to, particularly for things like materials, replacing books and other, other items that it lends and so on. And I don't want to put Eva or on the spot, but I guess I want to make sure that we're not selling them short with this budget in terms of having enough to do everything that they need.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I can address that. I told them the exact same thing when they went into, oh, am I not on?
I think you're not on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can address it. As they went into the budget cycle, I told the library board and even that if it needed to be 10% or 11%, that's what they needed to operate effectively. But that's what they should do. So I think they struggled a bit. But again, you could cut out 2 extra hours for 2 months of the year, but that's what they need to do to respond to the public. So I think it's a fair budget. I don't feel like they think it's a budget that I think they believe alleviated your concern in developing budgets.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else? Oh, thank you, Councillor Woods.
Just a quick comment, question actually for you. Did anything ever happen with slip and fall protection on the staircase to the basement?
yeah. So when you got back to me about the stair treads, I installed them myself.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, if there is something else, Folks, if you wish to take your leave, you may. Of course, if you want to stay till you have to go, that's fine. We're not trying to get rid of you, but thanks for staying and for coming to speak to your budget. I'm gonna then take us back to where we were, which was environmental services on page 11 of 27. And open it up there for comments and questions. Now, Councillor Mann.
Yeah, again. Yeah, sometimes we can, landfill wages, 116, budgeted 91, spent 96, now it's 150. So is it just an allocation of money? I realized that there was, and I know there's an element of increase late here, we're going into the negotiation with the union, et cetera. But why 15%? Allocation, that's line 16444 attached to the first one.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we operated differently through COVID. The facilities were not as busy, and our facilities person was working over there. So the facilities person that would normally look after all the facilities was working at the landfill 42 hours. As the facilities are much busier now and we're out of COVID this year, we are going to have dedicated staff over there, and we need to capture that cost.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to see that the compaction at both Falls and York Street has gone to 0, and I suspect that's because why? Because we have the excavator? Is that the reason? Yeah, okay, thank you. That's a good thing. Monitoring, why is that increasing so much at all? Is there new monitoring? It's up at 10,000 when we spent 5,000. That's line 16478. We were doing that like it was 5,300 in 2021, 500 in 2022, and suddenly it's 10 around.
Agree, Mr. Mayor. There's a cycle for certificate of approval, and every so many years we require a report, a full report to be submitted to Ministry of Environment, RCMA, and we're coming up to that. So this reflects the required report to go in. We submit every year an update, and we track all of our monitoring on our wells and make sure we're in compliance with our CFA, and that way it's our due diligence to make sure that nothing creeps up on us that we're not aware of.
Okay. My next one is 16484 lake. 5,000, didn't spend any, and we're on budget, and so I don't know, this gets into testing, I guess, on lakes, and I guess we've got 2 counselors on the environmental committee, so I don't know, is that right to have 0? It's a question, is it right to have a 0 in lake planning? Did you get all this? I know Dennis Morrison runs around and does all the testing on Whitestone, and you get into arguments about man science and all that kind of stuff that I don't pretend to understand. But we've got an official plan coming. My guess is will be next year will be the official plan, but my question is, should we be doing some lake planning or starting to do some lake planning this year? And if so, should we then be putting an amount in the budget to address that?
So the CIO wants to, I think, respond, so we're clear what this item is, because that's.
Yeah, Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And then I'll turn it over to the environmental committee representatives. It's showing 0 as well as the next line item, miscellaneous initiatives. And that's simply because we would take our guidance from the environmental committee and the
Yeah.
first meeting was yesterday. So
Yeah.
I think that was noted in Manisha's report that we didn't know what you planned to do, so we didn't want to
Okay.
presume anything. So that's why I suggest I turn it over to you. You may have some ideas at this point.
Okay, thank you.
If I might through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so we had our first meeting, the environmental committee yesterday. And we're just coming up with, a list of initiatives for the next 4 years. But just in regards to the lake planning, I know last year it was 5,000. And it just wasn't, there was something the environmental committee was thinking of doing, it just didn't turn out that there was enough time to get it done. But in regards to lake planning, I'm gonna take it aside from the actual environmental committee. And I've suggested maybe $25,000 we put there. And I think as part of our official plan, we really need to work on several lake plans, which would involve, several different types of consultants, be it from environmental consultants to a planner, to a biologist. So it's going to be made up of several items, a lake plan. And I think what we really need to do in order to get our official plan done, we almost have to have some of this lake planning done first if we want it in the new official plan. So that's why I suggested the $25,000 through there. And I think maybe the environmental committee can come back, but I also think it's just an item that maybe we can put on an agenda just as council. I don't think lake planning only is the environmental committee. That's one aspect of it, but there's a lot into it, from shorelines to the access points to lakes. But I do think it's important myself that we do engage a environmental consultant that can go out and start doing some water testing for us. Right now, I know on line item 16484, we have bathymetric monitoring, which I think is through Georgian Bay. And that's the item that was moved down. But I do think under lake planning this year, we do need to talk to council to probably put out an RFP, have a number of firms bid on, they would come out, do some water testing on a number of lakes, a number of times a year. So I think we have to put a fair number in there, but then we have to figure out how we're going to spend that as council and have that on a council agenda. So that we can start that process of gathering some of the data that will allow us to do lake plans in which we can put into our official plan. Makes any sense?
Okay, thank you. I wanted to make a suggestion when I saw this, and it's mostly because this particular budget item is under, environmental, as opposed to under planning. Okay, and I mean, I'm agreeing essentially with what Councillor Nash has said to you. Everything he said to you is correct. To me, lake planning is the development of lake plans. So I wouldn't call it lake planning. I would call this that 16484. I would call it something else, like environmental monitoring or water quality testing, something of that sort, because those are things that need to be done every year, and we have been slowly expanding the number of lakes that we do it. And I think that's going to be an important activity for the municipality going forward, so that we do have consistent data on what's happening to the lakes in our municipality. What I think of lake plan is the development of lake plans, and that is part of the official planning activity, which we haven't really figured out how we're going to do it yet. So I think, and it's not a capital. I don't think we capitalize it, but it could end up being a significant chunk of money that you spend, and you're not going to spend it all at once in 1 year probably, but you spend it when you do a major review of a of the official plan and the zoning bylaw, and in the process of that, I suggest that we should be doing some lake plans and because there are lakes, as you know, there are lake specific portions of the official plan. And that requires you to go and have, and figure out what is, each of our major lakes has its own little section in the official plan, right? So, but where would I put that? I would put that down under planning, which is we're gonna come to that in a minute. It's a very short thing and we probably have to put some, so we need two things. I'm not trying to take away anything from what Councillor Nash just said. We're in agreement, in strong agreement about this one, but I suggest we need to have some money in here to do this, things like water quality testing and so on. And we also are gonna need to put something in a minute when we get down to.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you maybe change that line item instead of lake planning, lake, and then in brackets, water testing. Or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe the 25, I was also thinking about lake planning, but to do a number of lakes a number of times a year is gonna cost some money, and I think, they go out. I know you have to do pH in the spring, and then you go out and you can take tests, and I think there is a lot of really great volunteers that go out and do it through FOCA. I think it's called the Lake Partners Plan. But I think for us, for our official plan, we need to confirm the data, call it, have a professional third party do it. So like you said, I think we're in agreement that it's very important to have done. I think we got to put some money aside. It's not a 1 year thing, it's going to be an ongoing. And I think to do it right, we do have to have a honest council meeting to discuss what I would attend it for. So I don't know if the number of 25,000 is accurate, but maybe we just change the heading, but I think it has to be a fairly substantial number to allow us to get going on that initiative if council is in agreement that we should be testing a number of lakes each year.
Okay, thanks. Anything else under this, under the environment part? Councillor Gray.
Yes, I think under the miscellaneous initiatives, we haven't really got into everything that we as a committee would like to do, but I would like to see us put some money in there just to make sure that we have some funds to be able to do some projects this year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Does she have a suggestion?
Did you have question was, did you have a suggestion of a dollar amount, I guess?
Oh, I was holding on my fingers to Janice. I know last year was $5,000. So I don't know if we want to earmark 5,000 or 3,000, something like that, I think, which would be the environmental stewardship committee.
I'm advised that it was 3,000 last year. Oh, yeah, it was 3,000. I can see that.
So I think if we keep it the same as that.
Is that okay? 3,000? Yeah, all right. Yeah, good point. All right.
If I might, I did have a couple other comments just in environmental services in general. The biggest comment I have is item 16-480, reserves landfill sites. And I know throughout today, I keep adding to the reserves because I think we have to add to it, but we have to cut costs on some of the other things in order to get our budget in order, but also increase our reserves. I've suggested $40,000 instead of 10,000. That's a huge increase, but right now we have a total of $28,000 in the landfill reserve only. And I know we're talking about, be it 8 years or 10 years or something, one of the landfills is going to be filled. Oh, we're going to have to do something which will probably end up being a transfer station of some sort. And I'm sure when we do a transfer station, we're not talking 30 grand or whatever that we have, and we're probably talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Which is why I'm suggesting we might just increase that number so we start getting money in there for 10 years from now.
If I may,
Go ahead.
I would propose that I contact our consultant. Which I've been in contact and been discussing with, and asked for them before we put a number in here. With the transition plan and what it looks like and what we would look like, what our options are with you on going forward, better information, as well as what our options are going forward with alls. So we would have a general understanding before we put a number in here. And I think from that information, a decision can be made. I'll see how quickly we can do something, if that would please council.
I think that'd be a great idea. And the only other item I had under environmental services was item 16-472, and it's the brush grinding. And I know I brought it up at a couple other council meetings, and I know the fire chief was sent off a letter, and I think staff is working on a report. But I just look at that and then I look at it from the sense of, I know we're constrained on our budget, and I know we're using the chips, or we're using the brush to chip. And I just sit there and look at it and say it's $12,000 every year. It starts adding up. That's our budget for this year. And I'd really like to see if we can implement burning of the brush, but I do know we have to do a better job of not putting the plastic in it if we're going to be burning it. And when it comes to, I guess that ties into, and I think you've already answered it, David, about the cover, the compaction and cover. There's no cost there. Because we have the excavator, which is great. If we ever need sand filled, we get that from a quarry or whatever. Do we have to purchase that, or do we get that material at no charge?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's a variety of sources. Typically, the lowest cost, most convenient is the one we go with, which is often if we have something which we're hauling past that's suitable material that does work for cover. You can use quite a few things as cover, and we usually use that. So we have some stored at York already. The brush grinding, we do have that report coming forward as well, which you'll see next council.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, are we done with environmental services? Yes? Okay, how about health services and actually, we don't have too much discretion on those ones, do we? No. How about cemetery part? Anything?
Yeah, I have. You must merit.
Go ahead.
16506 Fair Home Cemetery. Jerry was spent 37, and then we spent 204, and this year we want 53 out of that. I imagine there's some project going on up there or something.
Yeah.
Madam CAO.
Yes, I can speak to that. I'm just gonna. So the cemetery board, current cemetery board chair, he has asked for a few extra things. There's some fencing, tree removal, some contracted work, and a good deal of work by the public works staff that they want to catch up on some activities. Plus, there's a repair of a headstone estimated to be about $1,500. So it's over and above what you would normally see there, but there was some extra costs this year.
The headstone because we're vandalism?
I don't think so. I think it's old and I think it's fallen over. They know more about that headstone than I do.
Well, are we responsible to replace headstones at the cemetery?
Mr. Mayor, I can shed some more light. From what I understand from Ron Whitmill, is the original very first headstone, which holds significant historical value, and it's a one-off.
Okay.
And Ron has been incredible.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on that page 12? No. All right, moving to page 13, we have social and family services, and once again, these are levies, so I don't. Comment?
Sorry.
Councilor Lang?
628 Belvedere Heights to operating levy. I have no problem with the 71. I guess it's just a levy. But, and I guess Belvedere is coming out to see us in the next month or so, I would think. And not to get into the detail of it, but I think they're going around saying they need I thought it was a operating loan of $5 million, if I'm not mistaken, to buy up existing like lease places. So, and I think they're saying, well, if you don't give it to us voluntarily, we'll just do a capital assessment or something. I don't know whether that's 100% true, but anyway, so is that going to happen? My question would be, is that going to impact this budget? What does it mean? I think we're in for about 6% of whatever, and 6% of 5 million in my mind is 30,000, or is it 300,000? But it's on us, so that's my question. Should we be putting something in for this operational loan or whatever?
You want to answer, Marcia?
I'll answer as best I can in a roundabout way. So we're meeting with the Belvedere Heights Board of Management twice on March 30th in closed session, very brief, and it's very scoped, life leases and information that's of a personal nature. And then they'll be at the open council meeting on August or April 4th. One of two delegations, they'll take more time than the other delegation. And I think at that point, you're going to hear more about that 5 million line of credit and why they need it. And then we can integrate that into the next round of budget discussions if necessary.
Good, thank you very much.
All right, thank you for that. We can then, I guess, move to what's interesting. Facilities seems to be under recreation and culture, but anyway, not a problem. How about facilities? Continuing down the page. Councillor Nash?
I just had a couple comments. One of the comments was item 16703, building maintenance. I saw it as 4,000 in 21, 11,000 last year. Now we're budgeting 3,000. So I said 5,000, but maybe there was a reason why it was 10,000. I just had suggested 5,000. So I don't know if there's a reason why it is higher last year.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have some capital projects for this building set up. We have for the washers, we are looking to go to automated doors with the concrete work set up in front. As well as we have some siding proposed as well. So all those through capital. And we hope that the maintenance would be lower for the building.
Okay. So you think the 3 would be fine, or I've suggested 5? You think 3 is okay, and so be it.
If I may, Mr. May, sorry to interrupt. I just thought it was important. The reason it was $10,000 last year, I think Dave could speak to it. There were health department issues that were addressed and the water tap, which made it a year-round facility for us. Am I correct, Dave? I just wanted that to be clear, that because that 10,000 was a one-off.
Yes, we had everything start back up, so we had Lynn to certify and get everything going, and the house, that's right, we had the audit, we passed the audit, fine, but everything had to be done to get ready for opening back up.
Okay. And then continuing down, we have a bunch of X's and then numbers 2125, and this says Highway 124, and there's 3 items: insurance, property maintenance, and insurance again. So I guess my question is, or comments, under Highway 124 insurance, I'm assuming this is for the new building. And I'm not sure if we've gotten a quote for $2,500 for the new property, but I've just suggested 4,000 based on what I'm assuming it would come in at. And the property maintenance, I think we're being conservative when we say $5,000 for that building, so I've said 10,000. I know it's the first year of it, but I'm sure there's a bunch of work that we need to do to keep it up until it's decided what is done on that. And then facility reserves is fine.
Sorry, go ahead.
Also,
If I may add,
sorry about that.
I think what's helpful is the majority of those numbers, I'd say the vast majority of these numbers are numbers that we've researched. So for instance, Manish knows that is about $2,500 for insurance. So we asked that question. That's for the twist, for the vacant land that we're about to take ownership of. They've indicated zero, you know, it'll be part of a larger insurance package. So just if a number looks odd, let us jump in because we might be able to let you know how we came to that number.
Good, perfect. No, that answers it. Thank you very much. And then just two items at the very end of it. 16-775 and 16-776. It's a facilities truck. And I noticed the maintenance was 2,500 in 21, 3,500 last year. And we're only estimating 2,000 this year. So I've said, why don't we estimate 3,500 again for maintenance as it was the prior year? But the number that really jumped out was the fuel. It was $400 in 21, almost $5,000 last year. And now we're only estimating 800. So I put in a number and said maybe 1,500. But again, there might be a reason why last year was so high.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. This has been accounted for as if this vehicle is being replaced and if there's a current tender out for it. And you'll see the line items that are just above the new truck maintenance and the new truck fuel. And if you take those numbers into account, they should make up the difference.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, that totally answers that. And that was all I had for that section. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I just have one more. 16,782 infrastructure reserve. We had a budget of 30, we put 30 in, I spent it. We put it into reserve, then there's nothing this year. So what is the infrastructure reserve? And why is there nothing in this year? I'm sure it's. I just don't know why. What did we buy something and therefore now we don't need infrastructure reserve?
Testing, okay.
Yeah.
You may recall last year, just after we approved the budget, we went through an exercise to consolidate a number of our reserves. So, as part of the budget exercise, we did do the transfer here for the infrastructure reserve, but it actually went into the asset management reserve. And so now all of those transfers that were in the budget are now part of the transfer to the asset management reserve.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Was there a question? Over here? No?
That was the same question.
Oh, all right, okay. So are we at the end of facilities then? Okay, well, I guess we can keep going now because we've got a few. What else do we have on page 14? Under recreation and after school, thrift shop, any of those things? Councillor Lamb?
Yeah. Not to second guess the recreation committee, but we have enough volunteers and stuff on the recreation committee. I know during COVID it was 7,100 in 2021 and 12,000 last year. So these 20,000, I assume there's line items associated with 20,000. Hope there is. And do we have enough volunteers, whatever, to run $20,000 worth of program?
Well, probably the short answer to that is no. At least not yet. I can tell you what is happening. There is, we are slowly adding back programs, particularly in areas like fitness, for example. We have some new activities that we started. We did have one session of yoga and there was some cost associated with that. There's a thought that that'll be run again. There's also a fitness program that has started on Friday morning, and the Friday mornings and the people who are participating in that wanted to continue, and we have there's an instructor involved, and so far she is working for free, but I think at some point there's going to be some cost associated with that. So we're trying to add things back. There's also in there, and these items were in the budget last year, and they didn't get spent, but there was they were for items of equipment like mats, for example, for in here. And I'll tell you the reason why that money was not spent. We don't have any good place to store them. We used to have a lot, actually, we used to have a lot more mats, and they were piled, you may remember from years gone by, they were piled along the wall. And you'll see there's a few of them left. Most of them got discarded when the fire occurred, but there's a few of them sitting back in the room with chairs, but there literally is no more storage room. So the committee had a number of sort of, they're all, I guess you could argue that they're capital items, but they're not, none of them are expensive enough that we would amortize them likely, but they're, that's why we didn't spend the money last year, and they're sitting in the budget. I guess we have to resolve the issue of where things can be stored before we actually buy them. I don't know. I mean, the committee is meeting tomorrow night, and I did have an action item to raise with them to go into a little bit more detail about what we actually thought we would get done. But it's not going to, and it's kind of one of those things. I mean, we might be able to reduce the amount a little bit, but it's not going to be, take it down to 15 or something. It's not, it's not going to make much of a dent on the dishes that we've already been talking about making, but I suppose, I mean, that's the best answer I can give you. The committee is still, trying to be a little more realistic. And we also had intended a while back, and haven't quite finished, but we're going to provide a report to council on all of the things that are happening, because there's really some interesting, but I think you'll find some interesting activities that are going on, and there's been a tremendous collaboration with other groups, the library, I would note particularly, but others, other groups, Rod and Gun, Egg Society, etc., working together on trying to deliver activities. And we often rely on those volunteers, like anytime they have something like a breakfast in here or whatever, it's Ag Society people who do, like, there was one on the fishing derby day, and the Ag Society people actually put that on, and they handle the money aspect of it. So it doesn't come out of this budget or anything, but there's some, I can tell you, and I think it's a very positive report. There is, after going through a long period of time when not very much was happening, there's a lot more stuff going on now. So that's why the committee decided that they wanted to try and keep the budget at that level in their original cut. Anything else on page 14? Just gonna put a mark beside now. Okay. No. I'm curious, under planning and development, there is a thing called nursing station expenses. I'm not sure why that's. Can somebody just tell me what it is?
That's 16811.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's 16811, that's the number.
It's a shoreline application, but those are miscellaneous maintenance activities that have to be done. There's a door lock that's jammed, or window broken or something like that. So because the municipality owns that building, we do maintenance. So it's minor maintenance. There shouldn't be much this year because it's brand new, but we put a dollar amount there just to
No
use.
shoveling?
No, our staff do that so that we don't, it's just part of their.
We put it there instead of under facilities, is that right?
All I can say is, you know, as long as I've worked here, it's always been there. It's probably in the wrong space, but there it sits.
Okay, so other, all right, Councillor Nash, go ahead. Or, sorry, Councillor Lamb.
Big problem is under the same thing anyway. The whole 16, 8, 43, 44,
Yeah,
whatever, that whole area. Planning and development, you know, a budget of 40. I think if these are revenues that come in, or they're costs or whatever, and then we're back and forth. So I don't know what that line actually represents. The revenue, or is it expenses and planning and development?
That number represents expenses and it's offset by a revenue line item. So where we recover fees, where we cover the cost of the use of the planner, for instance, that goes into a revenue account.
Okay, so not for today or tomorrow, but I'd be interested, say, of that $66,598. How much was billed out plan to, you know, actual apply, right? And I'm sure some of it would be John Jackson's fees to work on whatever he's working, bylaws or.
Right, but the initial plan, for instance.
Yeah, like how much of that was covered? Well,
I think we can tell you pretty quickly, because it's under the revenue account.
okay.
yeah, so where there's a planning fees item, I guess, right?
Yeah, maybe Snow can find it quicker than I can.
Not better, no, it's not a good enough.
Certainly, the amount recovered this year was a little bit less than normal, and that has to do with OLT and its homes, some of the other matters that we dealt with Bolger, so. Yeah.
That's another. What is it? Put the mic on. Hello?
Go ahead.
Can see the revenue 50.
53. So most of the 66 was recovered, I guess.
37,000.
137. Oh, almost, I thought it was 50, okay, 37. So, okay, well, but this year, again, it's 40, so should it be 40? I know it was 47 2 years ago, and then it was 66. Now we got it back in 40, so I guess is that the right number, I guess.
If I may,
Go ahead, please.
That's one of those, well, it's a round number, obviously. We hadn't given a great deal of thought, and that combines with what we're going to do with our planning services. You know, we got some information recently on some changes that will hit us. So that there definitely has to be some more thought put into that and some analysis. The 40 was just really a placeholder at this point.
So I'm gonna go here. Planning, parkland reserve 16,844. Again, last year we had expenses of, expenses of 40,000. We didn't budget anything, and now we're not budgeting. So what's that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Parkland Reserve is basically what happens with Parkland Reserve is because it's a restricted reserve under the Planning Act. We receive revenue in and it's immediately transferred into the Parkland Reserve. So that 40,000 that you're seeing there in 2022 was immediately, that was money that came in and then is immediately transferred into the reserve. We don't budget for it because it is up and down pretty dramatically, and it is always a perfect offset in the budget, so there is no impact.
Okay, thank you. I'm coming to the end. My last question, I think, on everything is 16,845 to Steel. 6,200, again, get all these committees and stuff. What's CNO again? I know it's been there for years. What is CNO?
Do you want to answer?
Yeah, I looked it up the other day because Councillor Gray asked me and now it's slipped out of my mind, but it's.
Great.
Yeah, it was a FedNord grant that was related to economic development. So that's really the amount that the municipality is going to pay to the Economic Development Committee this year. And you can see it's just a little bit higher than last year.
I thought it was $1,100. We just moved it yesterday.
That was CB&DC.
What's
Yeah, this is the Economic Development Collaborative that
Simply doing the same thing.
No, CPDC is not economic development. They help subsidize loans for small businesses who have challenges with other financing.
Call that economic development, but anyway.
Okay.
That's the last of my questions until we get to the regular.
Okay. Councillor Nash.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple questions or comments in regards to the lake or the planning capital and the parkland. So I think this already been spoken to, but item number 16-843. I know it was budgeted at 40,000, it's kind of a rough number as a guesstimate. I've recommended maybe increasing it to 50,000. I think we might have a little less I'll say development this year just because of the economy. So it's a hard number to guess, but I suggested maybe 50,000. We've spoken to it earlier, possibly an item to include in here, which we don't right now, is the lake planning. So I don't know if we want to make a new line in it and earmark some money for it, with 25,000 I was talking about earlier. I think under this planning, there should be a lake planning highlighted at it. And then under the parkland reserve, thanks for the comments that on it in regards to how it works, but for item 18 or 16-844, if we know from development applicants that there's a 5% fee, I think we know there's going to be some money put in. Even though it's offset somewhere else, if it stays in the reserve, we're not spending it until we spend it. So I think we should put in a guesstimate in here of some number that would reflect that, yes, there's an expense coming in for it. And I've put 25,000 only because I think it's going to be less than last year, but I think leaving it blank might not do justice in the spreadsheet overall. I think even if we just earmark a guesstimate of some sort, knowing it gets transferred, but I think if are we allowed to put a number to it as a guesstimate or not? Yeah, okay. So maybe we can earmark something there just so we know it's what showed up as a real expense that we know. So maybe it's 25 or 30, something like that. And that's all the questions I have for the whole rest of the budget, except one item, which is at the very end. And it was under school boards. And the numbers show almost $1 million. It's 981,000, 968,000, 987,000. And then this year there's a blank. Is that an in and out kind of there? We get paid the $1 million, then it comes out. Okay, and if it does that, is there any reason why we don't show it as an in and out? Or do we do that later once we know the numbers? Okay.
Yeah, I'm assuming we don't even know what the tax rate for it is, right? For school.
It will be same for the last year. Totally increased in the assessment value. So
Okay, so you could actually put a number there, then I guess. Right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the reason we don't put it in the first draft or two is just because it keeps the numbers, it focuses the number of discussions that we're having today on our budget.
Yeah.
Once we inflate our revenues by $1 million and then we inflate our expenses by $1 million and it just inflates it and
Yeah.
doesn't add to the conversation.
And we have absolutely no control over it. That's the bottom line. So it's an in and out. I understand. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions before we move to capital then? All righty. This is page 16. We start going and there are Various expenses and. Let's just stay on page 16 for the moment. Anything about what you see there, general government, fire department? We might think public works carries on the next page, but yeah.
I might agree with Mr. Mayor for general government again. I tried to put a lot of time into looking at this, and I know some of the items we're gonna discuss when it comes to these capitals. I know it'll be hard to discuss. But I do think at the end of the day, I think we need to conserve some money, just as a general statement for all of what we're talking about now in capital. The first line item, and we spoke to it a little bit at the council meeting yesterday, was community center communications. We had 32,000 budgeted, I put 10,000 there just as an earmark, just to lower it down a little bit. I don't think it'll be zero this year, but I think maybe 10,000 would be more feasible. And then the only other item in that section was official plan consultants of $45,000. And I look at that and say, I know it's a very, very important item to be done in this term of council. But I think we spoke a little bit earlier, maybe we have to start on some lake plan data and some lake plan studies first to be part of that. So what I'd recommend is maybe the 45,000 be earmarked for next year instead of this year to reduce our spending this year, knowing that we're gonna have to do something, but maybe that's the tackle for 2024 instead of 2023 for the consultant side of that. So just push that 45,000 to 2024.
The whole amount.
The whole amount. But we added some money under lake planning in the budget for doing some side work that'll help the official plan.
I don't know what the rest of you think about that. Are you comfortable with that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would think that we would need the consultants to help us decide what the lake plan work that needs to be done, and so maybe we still need that money to be able to work on lake plans. I'm not sure, but I presume we need some help with the consultant.
That's what I am.
Yeah, we've got a lot to accomplish this year, and as we're going through the strat plan, it's evident there's a lot to do. My guess is that it's only a guess that the official plan will be reviewed officially in 2024, not 2023. But we're not heading that now. There's no doubt that I don't think it's any secret that our planner is phasing into retirement, so we have to find a company or a person to do that planning. I think there's going to be some costs associated with that. So my feeling is that we should keep some in there, not maybe 45, but I can't see a year where, for instance, the planner whose technical totals, I don't know if it's secret or what, but by September it's going to be gone. Right?
Yeah.
So you're going to have 30 a year that you don't have a planner and then not have consultant in there for that. I think is inappropriate. So I don't know whether that figure should 10, 15 or whatever. And also if you're doing the official plan, they got to start doing some prep work on it, you know, and I don't know what that is. I'm not planning, but I think it should, I don't agree that it should be 45, and I don't think it should be 0. I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe 15 is.
Yeah, I would be more, personally, I would be more comfortable with about 15 or something like, just so there's some, because you will need some help in figuring out exactly what work needs to be done to prepare for things like lake plans and then
Yeah.
people hopefully. We can talk about this another time, but I see lake plans as, there's lots of work that volunteers can do to collect data, right? And so on. It's not like you hire a planner and they just go away and do it all. But you need help to have the planner work with the group to figure out exactly what it is you're gonna do and make sure everybody knows what they're looking for, what they have to go do. So I would, again, I'd say maybe 15 might be.
Okay,
in this year and then put. We can figure out what we need for another year, but. So anyway, is there anything else about? General government? Yeah.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I take it the pay equity review of 6,500. I worked in HR all my life and I thought pay equity is, I know it doesn't in a governmental sense, but in private industry, it went up 25 years ago. But, and that's not to comment on pay equity itself, but this must be a mandatory legislative thing, I'm thinking.
CAO.
Yes, the municipality of Whitestone has a pay equity plan that's about 20 years old. It's actually still valid. So if you wanted to do a full blow-in pay equity plan, you're looking at probably 3 times what we budgeted. But in talking to a pay equity expert at Hicks Morley, they said we can do what we call a maintenance plan, which is simply update some job descriptions. Now, we wouldn't have the law firm do it for us. We'd have a consultant. It'd be a lot less expensive, but we are required to do pay equity. We haven't for that many years, so it makes sense to be in compliance.
Aware of our program. So what I thought the answer was. My next one is down to our fire chief. I don't know whether I'm just on the same page, 16 of 27. Replace the fire truck. So I talked to Bob earlier, but for 450,000, but I think the actual cost of the new truck is 600,000 or something like that. I don't have the number in front of me. How much is it, Bob?
Yeah, so I've been doing some investigating and it's between 5 and 6.
Okay.
So I think what we need to do is put out an RFP to get the exact amount and then we can know that and then we can freeze that cost. So we know exactly how much we're gonna be short and go from there.
So my discussion with the fire chief, when I saw this was, and again, maybe the answer is we need to spend 500,000 or 600,000 for a new truck, but our new pumper, it's got to be less than 25 years old, and I understand ours is coming up to 25 years old next year or whatever, right? So I said, oh geez, and our fire department have nothing but praise on it. But 90 some odd percent of their calls, of course, are medical. We really don't have that many fire calls to. So I guess the immediate thing was use the used truck that it would spend. You want to spend 480,000 for a 15-year-old truck, but I mean, is there an alternative? The truck that could be 10 years old would be 300,000. 5 to 10 years. And again, that's not to preempt a decision that I would make on it, but I asked our chief if he could kind of look at that, and we don't need to answer right now, but I know there's lots of them that are 25 years old. And the other thing is, what would we do to replace it? Would we, I assume, trade in the other one? I think, I don't know what the value of the old one would be, right? So, and I don't know how we do, I guess we're gonna debt finance this. I'm surprised, quite frankly, that we didn't have more in the budget. That's not your fault, Bob, but, we got a $600,000 expenditure with how much in the reserve, 200 or something?
171.
Yeah, so there you go. We're now looking at 300,000 or 400,000 that and I'm part of the problem, probably if we had done the reserves properly, we'd have 480 in there and we'd be spending 50 and buying a truck, right? It's one of the problems. So that's a long-winded story about the fire truck, but it's a big clump of money. And I know we don't get it till next year. And I just want to make sure that we make the right decision for the community. I don't want to jeopardize fire, but enough for me, I guess.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I did check around the newest, oldest truck I could find was 2005. So,
well, they don't exist, I guess.
they do, they occasionally come up, but, there's none right now.
But if you were to keep monitoring that, let's say we say, okay, go get a new truck, well, I guess you got to sort of put an order to, and then you start to pay, right? Do they want a down payment if you?
No, when we put the RFP out and it comes back and we pick the truck that we're gonna buy, or underneath the letter of content from the municipality saying that in 2024 or 2025, when the truck's delivered, you're gonna pay X number at all. Nothing down.
Okay, so. I don't, as a big chunk of change, anyway. The only other thing on that, someone else may want to comment on the fire truck. The only other thing I have on this page 16 is for the sidewalks on Gordon Drive and Marina Drive. I misunderstood it last year somehow naively. I thought Johnson was going to get us the sidewalk. And I guess that's not true. It's 225,000. But there's 132,000 grant associated with that. So the real cost is whatever, 90,000 or that area, right? So, I guess, you know, again, in the sense of keeping the tax rate, are we best to, if it's 90,000, you know, put 45 away this year, then next year only got 45, or are we best just to do the sidewalk? I'm 100% behind the sidewalk from Moore Drive to the bridge for the kids in school and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not against it. I'm just saying, is it a project for this year or is it a project for next year? I need to put half of it away, so I just throw that out as a comment. That's the end of page 60 for me. Thank you.
So I wonder, before we move on, if oh, sorry, I'm looking at our facilities manager, or at our sorry, our manager of public works. Is there something, there's a grant involved? Do we have to use it now or?
For you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. We have to have the work completed and invoices paid by the end of 2026.
Oh,
Okay, so we could do what Councillor Lamb suggested, then theoretically we could defer it, or, I mean, not defer the project, not,
or put 45.
you know, put something.
Yeah, right, get it done early next year, right? Well, in the spring.
Yeah.
So when-
That's the question I'm asking. I was just concerned that maybe we had to, if we were gonna do it, we'd lose the grant. If we didn't do it right away, we'd lose the grant. That often happens.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. There will be some costs this year for the design side. That has not been completed. It was unable to be completed last year. Consultants ran out of time. But there is some costs associated with that. But that can be claimed through as a fee through the grant as well. The grant's for 60% of our cost.
So do we have approval from the MTO? I mean, that's always the hang up, whether you're putting a sign up or a sidewalk or whatever.
The short answer is yes. The design is not approved because it's not done, but the MTO approves to put it in. It has to go through, once the design is completed, it has to go through their North Base reviews. Period. So that will take a little bit of time as well. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to defer to get our ducks in a row, to get our ducks in a row for the design and approvals done this year, and then you would have time to prepare. Once we have the approvals, then we can do an RFP with lots of time and hopefully attract more people.
Well, I see lots of heads nodding, so I think that's the direction.
Councillor Bray.
Just wondering, what do you estimate the cost of design would be?
I have that number coming back to me any day. I didn't expect it today, but going forward to the next meeting, I will have that number if that's acceptable.
There was $8,000 in last year's budget that we didn't spend according to this, so I'm guessing it's something in that ballpark.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I might through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm gonna go back to the fire truck first, and then I'll come up to the sidewalks after. If I'm correct on the fire truck, Bob, there's no cost this year whatsoever. What we're gonna be doing is putting out a tender, seeing if we want to purchase a new one. That would be this year. And then if a fire truck is awarded, it would be arriving most likely in 2025. So if we put more money in the reserves this year, more money in the reserves next year, that would really help offset some of the costs if we increase that reserve, right? But there is no cost this year. What we'd just be doing is simply putting out a tender, possibly awarding a tender, and then it would take, give or take 2 years for that new fire truck to arrive. Am I right?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. You don't pay anything until the fire truck arrives at it.
And then to the sidewalks, I think getting a grant for 60% of it, or 132,000 that was noted, is great. I guess I have a couple questions to it. If we allocated, say it was $50,000 for this year for the designers and rep work or whatever it might be, would we get in our budget the 132,000, or would we have to reduce that number? And if we have to reduce the number, I guess where I'm coming from, if we have to spend it, maybe you're better to bite the bullet. If we can do it this year, we get the full 132,000 or whatever's budgeted and get the work done. Whereas if we only spend 50 grand this year, we're going to reduce our budget from income by whatever, $100,000. So it's going to change that bottom line quite a bit. And then the question I have for the work itself, I guess we'd have to go out for a tender. I'm not sure we've gone out for a tender for the design work yet, but I understand from MTO, just talking to them this last year, but something completely different. But I was about a culvert, but they were working down the highway, and I was talking to the guy at MTO. From what I understand, the long-term goal with MTO is they're going to do the next phase of the highway and end up redoing the highway through Whitestone all the way to South River. In the next, I think they said 5 or 10 years, then it sounded like it was probably about 10 years. Would any of the work we're doing now involve curves or stuff that could be affected if they come through here and blow the road out and redo it in a few years? Like, are we talking curves in a sidewalk, or is a sidewalk several meters off and won't be affected if they come through and do work in a number of years?
If you could clarify what the question is, it sounds like there was a lot.
Okay, so
maybe.
Yeah, no problem. So I understand from MTO that they're gonna be redoing the highway, going all the way through town here, all the way to South River. If they did that and we were to put the sidewalks in now, would they be ripping the sidewalks out when they do, like, basically, is it a curb that's gonna go in the sidewalk, or is it just a sidewalk?
Mr. Sounds like a two-part question. I would have to get more information, and when we do our reviews of the design, the questions will be asked when the plans are, or I'm not aware of an exact date, and well, it's very difficult for them to commit to, because projects can get shelved as we get different political parties. Some projects get prioritized over others. So in their plans, we can ask that question. When is it planned to do Whitestone? I can ask that question. And then 2, I do believe that the curb and gutter is required if we put a sidewalk in, and that will have catch bases and the extension of a deep culvert down there. And that's really what's driving the cost, curb and gutter. And then the next question would be maintenance. Right now, we don't maintain the sidewalks in the winter.
Okay, thanks for the answer. I'm sure when I drive along there, doing a sidewalk is, like you said, isn't a simple job. With hanging the shield with big ditches, but I wouldn't, if you could, like you said, next time you speak to them, I'd hate to do reviewing a curb and gutter with the sidewalk, and then they come in and maybe rip it out in a few years. So if you could just check and make sure if we are spending this money and it's going in, that MTO is going to come through and do something with that investment that we've done. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks. Anything else under, on that page? Councilor Lamb.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry. Back to the fire truck. Two questions. Are we aware of, or who's going to look at whether there's any grants available or programs available? You know, between now when we get delivery of this, that we will, you know, I want to make sure we're paying attention to that. Maybe there aren't. No. And secondly, I don't think anyone said what do we get for the old pumper. Like, isn't that worth 50 grand or something? Or I don't know what figure, what's, do we have any idea what a trade-in would, or whatever we do is we trade in. We got our own pumper, which, how much are they selling for? The 205?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, around 30,000. When I talked to the manufacturers, they would have to see at the time of that are new, because it's 3 years there, 2.5 years there. So that would depend on whether the unit comes to the exact cost. And yes, I know a lady who works for government that I've been talking to quite often about grants, and she's keeping me up to date. But as of now, there is none, but if one comes over, they're gonna be on it.
But you'll be told if.
I'll be told, yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
He will be first at the door.
Yeah. By the way, I want to compliment staff because I think even though it's been grueling here for 3 hours, I think you're all doing a great job. And you really covered a lot of stuff, but you got to recognize, we haven't seen the numbers till a week or so ago, so unfortunately, we get the right to ask the question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Can we go to the next page? We've got some items. We've got 2 more items related to the public works garage, then we've got roads and bridges. And that goes on to, I'm guessing, on to page 18. Yeah, there's a couple of top pages you do roads and bridges.
One page is new, it's the public work garage lighting internal. I get that building 20 years older. What is, well, it's internal lighting, but why do we have to put it for lighting? Or repair or whatever we call it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did get a quote for additional lighting in our main street. It's pretty dark in between the trucks to get through, and we've been making increased efforts to do more work internally, maintenance on the vehicles we have, cost down, as they have possibly going up. And it's been requested many times for safety work. I mean, it's just really hard to see. Each truck creates a shadow and they're pretty close together, and the lighting, the way it's set up, those rows, there's 3 rows, and it's just dark in there. So to get additional lighting, that was what voted through our electrician.
Well, being a layman, and I don't understand electrical, but I mean, when you plug in a great big flood, it'll light up forever, right? With all these lumens and whatever, and it's not $12,000. So I just, again, building's not that old, and you're getting this lighting, it's a new lighting, and you could say, hey, Councillor Lamb, the payback on this lighting compared to what we've got is 4 years or something, right? Or you're just going to say, well, once you get the lighting, our hydro costs, well, $3 grand. Just, again, it's a tough year on, you know, and all these things we've added. At the end of the year, stuff like this may get caught up in the cannot afford it this year kind of. Yeah, that's all I'm saying. Because you know, unless you'd like to face the electorate with a 14% tax.
If through there, through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may just keep this in for a little longer, I have it on my list to look for grant opportunities for.
Good. Okay, thank you. That's all I have on that bit. Sorry.
If I may, then, Mr. Mayor, I had that item flagged as well for the lighting, and I had written right next to it grant to see if it might be possible. So I think that's a great idea if you can look into that. And then I'm going to apologize in advance for what I'm about to say for several items on this section.
I'll go with the one.
No, I'm trying to do it to cut our budget, because I know it's a very tight budget when I look at how much we're gonna call borrowing, even though some of it's coming from the reserves or an operating loan. And I see trouble in the next couple of years overall. So with that said, the fuel pumps, public works, I'm suggesting we don't do that. In the sense of whether we're getting fuel from now, I think we can carry on doing what we're doing in a tight fiscal year if possible. I'm just gonna comment on that and let staff review it.
What's that?
It is the first item under proposed.
Oh, it's at the top, yeah, sorry. Okay.
And then a couple of the main ones here, again, I apologized in advance. So, Maple Island Road, Highway 520, the Shady Maple Trail and Bunny Trail Railway crossing to Oakview. I travel that road all the time. I think we always need to invest in it. But when I see the 105,000 for Maple Island and the 220,000 for Bunny Trail, what I am suggesting simply is let's try and get our finances a little down so we're borrowing less because interest rates are so high. And maybe we can push this off until next year. That's just my suggestion again. I don't know if that would be possible to maybe delay it by a year. I know they're big projects. I know they're very important projects. I'm all for investing. But I think sometimes you have to look at the overall budgets that we have and say, maybe we wait a year until we get a little bit more money instead of borrowing to do it. So I guess on those two items.
If I may respond to this quickly, I will look into this and get back to you. We do have grants available, and if we don't use them, we don't get the money. So they're not straight out of our pocket, this sort of. So we can look at the house for grants and what projects we have, and if that will paint a better picture, and I'll bring it back to you.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. And then off topic to that, but I know at the beginning of the Bunny Trail, when you come off of 124, they've paved it for the first bit. Maybe the first 5 kilometers. So if you come off Highway 124, it's been paved. So maybe the first 5 kilometers. Do you know if that was through like some type of a grant? And that was my question. If there was, maybe we can look to see if there's some form of grant, because I know they actually did true asphalt, a little forget the side of the road. They did a lot of work, and I was just wondering, maybe there's some form of a grant available. I don't know if you might be able to look into that.
We do, through you, Mr. Mayor, we do look at grants all the time, and we are, everything we can. We are getting grants that are available. Okay.
Yeah. And I know some people in the public that might be saying, don't do the work there. I drive and I know it's a hard road. I just think this year might not be the year. And then the last one, which I go over the bridge many times, Alms Road Bridge. I know there had to be some work done on it or on the sides of it when there was a big flood in 2019. I think some of it washed out almost. But I look at that $150,000 expense and just say, when we push this off, and instead of doing the walls, deck, guardrail, retaining wall, maybe we can just replace the boards on the top or something. Again, I know it's something we need to budget for, but it's just the amount of reserves we're putting and the amount of loans we're taking out and really trying to pull back on a lot of expenses for this year and trying to do something next year. So again, these are just suggestions. I know it all needs to be done eventually. But anyways, those are my comments.
For you, Wayne.
Okay, I think our treasurer wants to respond.
There's a grant around $175,628, which include OCIF and gas tax. They should be used in the current year, so 175,000 expense to the road. We can provide it with the grants.
Perfect. With those still around for, like, we're spending 84,000 on Shaker Road. We're spending 15,000 on Maple Island, 15,000 on York Street. So there is still grants there that would still get money if we're doing other areas too, right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we, just to conserve time, if I may get back to you on all this, including priorities of where you can cut and what you can push back and what exactly is happening with the grades. I think you'll have better information to make decisions.
And much better than that.
I think.
Council Lambert.
Yeah, thank you, David. I think that's great. One comment I would make is I know on Canning, we put slurry seal down. And the purpose of that, as I understand it, is to extend the length of the road. And so I hate to not do something in terms of slurry seal and say, right, save the nickel, but it's gonna cost you a dime 2 years from now because you put the slurry seal down. So you're the expert in that, David, not me. But you have to assess, I think, the age of the road, the condition of the road, and what would be the reality of we push slurry seal on that 2 years now instead of now or next. Right? So that can perhaps be part of it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So I think where we are is now we're on page 18. There's nothing in the 2023 budget and nothing more for roads, but there is now some fleet. There are a few items, water tank for tandem truck and a couple of things. Anything more on that on page 18?
I'll let Council go first.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thanks. First one that jumped out at me is the water tank. 42,000. And we budgeted 22,000.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I do apologize, that was my error. When I originally looked at it, it was for the cost of the tank, tank. But the tank that would operate in our trucks that you load yourself and have the sprayers and applicators with it is 44,000. Reason. Yeah, and other municipalities I've talked to the other municipalities in West Prairie Sound and the Mangaroons Brothers, as well as the or reduce the trucks as well. There's not many options.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Yeah, I just. Just from my public works background, I think one of the things that Dave should mention is that the reason you want a water truck is because you have a lot of gravel road. So you use it in concert with the calcium. And if it's a really dry summer, all you have to do is water the road and the calcium will come up. So it's for maintenance purposes. It's not just to drive around and have a pretty tank.
If I may, if you don't want complaints, then you get this. If you dust is something that people changes people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And if you want to see people turn, don't let this.
If I might hear you, Mr. Mayor. So I've seen an existing water tank that's around, and I don't think it's that old. So is that what we're using now? And again, I apologize before in this section, but if we're using that water truck or water tank now that we have and it works, is this something we can put off? Because obviously we're watering the roads with some type of equipment right now. And why do we need a new one if we already have an existing?
If I may, the one we have now was called from scrap, donated. Well, that was not in service. It was rotten. Trying to repair it. Well, you lose as much. You can't go very far with it. We've tried and put a lot of effort into a lot of hours trying to cobble it together. We can pick up some water with it, but it falls out before we get too far. So we can't effectively water the roads with what we have. It can't be done. We need to purchase something. We don't have We put a lot of hours and effort into sending people out, trying to get the water and then get it to where it needs to be. And it's not, it's something we can't budge on. There's maybe some other things we budge on. This is not one that we can.
Thank you. And then going through.
Councillor Wood.
Councillor Wood said it,
Right.
Sorry.
So last year we budgeted 22. Is there still 22 in the budget, or do we actually have to budget 40 this year, or we just need it up with?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, because nothing was spent, then we didn't fund it. So essentially, the money that we would have used last year is still sitting in the reserve, because these are things that we were thinking about using the equipment.
Okay, so anything else on page 18?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a couple of correctors. So again, I apologize in advance. Facilities truck with tailgate lift. I know we just bought a new pickup truck last year. I think there's other ones. The one I see drives around, and again, I'm sitting here looking and saying, yeah, we can pull money from reserves, but we're reducing reserves that we're gonna need in other years. And I just look at it and say, I personally don't think spending $55,000 this year is fiscally responsible. I don't need a comment right now. I'm just saying maybe staff can look at that. On the next item, thumb for backhoe. I know we just purchased the backhoe. I would have thought the backhoe would have come with the thumb, or we could have taken the thumb from the old excavator, old backhoe. And I know it's not tied into this, but I'll just mention it now. I know when I was looking at stuff, originally the idea was buy the excavator, trade in the existing backhoe, which was, I think it was costing too much in maintenance, and it was worn out, but I haven't seen it be sold yet. So I'm hoping somewhere we have a tender out for the sale of that past backhoe to recuperate some money might be used for some of these items. And if we do have a thumb on the existing one, would it be transferred over to the new backhoe?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think this is a quick answer. That was the intention and plan to take the thumb off the existing one. The thumb was, that was perfectly fine. It doesn't fit. It's a different width. It's just different, completely different machine. The same with the forks doesn't fit. Runs, and our sweeper, the sweeper unit we use does not fit as well. So rather than going out to the old backhoe, if we don't run it as much, it doesn't seem to cost us much. We don't drive it all over. We drive a newer one, which is more reliable. So that's where we're at. And we really still need something in one location to load it. And then when we're done with work, we need something else to work. We could use the excavator, used as a second loading unit. It's not as fast. It's also very thought that for loading our little trucks, since I've been here, 3 or 4 times that we've had a backhoe go down, our loader go down at one time. And it's a critical unit when we are plowing in the winter, and having a backup does help. We've had to scrounge and call for a rental. We've had to go down to neighbors trying to get in the middle of the night when you show up and the machine's not running. You're responding to a snowstorm. It's not really the time to solve problems. So we preload at night where we can and prepare for worst case scenarios. But it does offer some, with a little bit of money we'll get for it. It does offer some resiliency in our operations.
You know, thank you. And the only reason I was asking, I think before it was the excavator could be used as a backup for stuff. And even a little bit of money when we were doing the excavator talk. I think it was said that we could get 50,000 for a trading for it. So I think the 50,000 is a little bit more than a few bucks. And I thought the whole reason why we were getting a new backhoe was because this one doesn't work Now here that we got the new one, but none of our attachments fit the new one, so now we need to keep the old one. I think we need to look at that and say, what can we sell it for? I don't think we have. Anyways, I think we should look to selling it as we said we would. And then the last question I have on that section, again, I apologize in advance, is 18,000 for a reversible plow. I'm assuming it's something for a snow plow, not like an implement for like a plows in a field or something like that. And again, I'd say, I don't know if this is a year to get that. We've been making do with what we have. And I'd suggest we make do with what we have and bring that in the budget. But I'd like to know what a reversible plow is, if it's what I think it is, or if it's something for earth moving or something.
Thank you very much. If I may, just to move things forward, can I respond?
Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah, I think, I would appreciate that. We are past curfew. And I know people have places to be, I think,
So
so.
I'm fine. Fine to this. If it's, we can go an extra half hour, can't we, or are we past that too?
No.
Well, yeah.
We're close to the end. Oh,
Yeah, I mean, we are almost, but, you know, there's other. Well, I guess we just have one more page now,
not very much.
but if we could just, you know, just highlight the items and let's pick them up later so that, anyway, if you want, if we're not gonna wrap up right on them, we need to do curfew.
I'll
Should have done
move
it.
curfew.
Councillor Bray has.
I'll move curfew. We're near the goal line, gotta push it over the goal line.
Who's seconding?
I'll say.
You're second, all right. All those in favor? Okay, all right, please, let's try to get, just highlight the things that need to be responded to, so we can.
I have a lot of other things. You know, the nurses station, like that's 156,000, whatever that is a real number now that we know it. And yes, we didn't get all the grants that we wanted because we didn't spend as much as we thought. But I still think we came up with a pretty good deal for the community and whatever we ended up paying. I take it that anything coming from McKellar, there is anything built into this budget, or did they stop giving us money?
Very good, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
They originally committed to 60,000 and then that was reduced to 30, so we got the 30,000.
Okay.
We did get another grant that was unexpected of 25,000, but I think Manish can explain this better. He's the numbers guy on this, so the 156,000 is what we need to fund this year, but there's also but that's because the project isn't finished yet. So there's also some funding that's still available to offset that. And it's just that the project spanned a year and we are close to the goal line where we've got some landscaping to do, a little bit more work to do. And thank you. And I'm just gonna say right now, because we're talking about the nursing station, there is a grand opening planned. The long weekend of May, the Sunday of the long weekend. You'll all get an invitation, but mark your calendars at this point. They're just sorting things out and it should be fantastic.
So the comments that I have, and again, I don't have anything more on the line items, but I have put it in here, speaking to a bunch of things. What about Rudder Street closure? We talked about that. Wallace Street parking, we talked about planning board, we talked about boat launches, we talked about parking at the Twist and the other new property. There's nothing that I see in the budget. You know, I know we've got to have this public engagement as to what we're going to do with the Twist. But one of the things we talked about was increasing the parking. You know, we got a problem in McKellar, had to take away the ballpark and have people park there. It's going to be not very long until Agricultural Society, we're going to find the same thing here in town. They're not going to be able to park on the highway. We've got three acres or whatever over there. I'd like to see some money put into the budget to increase parking somewhere. And over here at the next door, what's the name of the guy?
Just Franklin.
That's another potential parking area. Could also take the boat launch or the dock that's there, and probably eventually move us over to that property, the other side. But anyway, so that whole thing, I think we have to look at and put some monies in the budget for that. I talked about the Inspire pumper. I don't know, the accessibility act is, I think, 2025, but I mean, our buildings, I don't know what there is in our buildings. Is this going to be done by the consultants who look at the asset management plan and come back to us, I assume?
That's correct. So once the report comes in, we'll be able to plan ahead for 2024. But we also have access to a $6,000 grant this year that we're working on
Okay.
for accessibility items.
So the last thing I have is a question, and then I'm gonna make a comment. You know, I have finances and whatever, but I have a line of credit that, of course, you know, started off at whatever it was, 2 or 3% this year. Now it's whatever the heck, 8%, right? We find it really bothers me that we're top of the interest rate when we're going to be borrowing
Tomorrow, right?
6 and 7%
You need it now.
or whatever. And we're going to be doing, I heard, for 15 years and whatever. Slave thing. Is there any way you can cut? Just go to the line of credit so that when the interest rates go down, your line of credit goes down, or is that? Or am I, that's how I do my personal finance, right? I don't say, oh, great, I need 25 grand, let's go up and get a mortgage for 25,000, pay 8% for the next 20 years, like, or am I full of all? So I don't know who's gonna answer that.
Let's follow the one.
Pardon?
One of our treasurers, maybe.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are pretty much restricted to borrowing through either debentures or loans. We do have a line of credit with our bank, but it is an operating line and it can only be used. It's actually restricted in terms of how much you can use each quarter because it's meant to cover when we're low on tax dollars. So we are somewhat restricted. At this point, I don't think that Manish probably intended to borrow early this year in the hopes that perhaps the rates might come down just a tiny bit. We usually get to the borrowing pieces at the end of the year when we have all the costings. But it's unfortunate, and because that affects directly how much debt we can incur, because it's based on how much we're paying every year. It's not based on how much debt we have. It's what we're paying every year. So there's no magic bullet on that one, I don't think, fortunately.
So I guess my final comment, for Al, is, you know, I've been around doing this long enough, but I know you've got operating costs that are put up, whatever. I don't think they went down. I think they went up to all requests. So and when the rubber hits the road, the flexibility you have is really in capital projects, and that's what unfortunately, yeah. And as a political answer, if I told people in Whitestone that taxes were going up 12 or 13%, I changed my telephone because it would go bananas, right? So I know what I'm encouraging staff to do, and particularly in the roads area, is take a look at wants and needs, okay? And you know, the needs are the needs, the wants are the boy, it'd be nice to have this or that, whatever, but this is not the gear to get the wants. I don't know any clearer to say it than that. I see the tax increase somewhere in the area of 6 to 7%. I guess if we said it possible to do, it's not the 8, and then there's whatever, but this is not a year from double digits, and so I know that's a speech, but you need to cut. Okay, is what I'm saying. You need to cut. We need to cut somewhere, right? Because we're still too high from what all I see. Hey, thank you.
You wanted to comment, Barb?
Correct, yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, and it's one of the dilemmas when you are working with a capital budget and an operating budget. The funding sources that you use for your capital budget are discrete in that they are basically debt financing reserves or grants. So if you cut your capital budget, then we may be able to reduce our debt financing. If you recall the impact of the debt financing on the operating budget this year is about 36,000, which will grow to 80,000 when it's debentured. So if you reduce your debt, then you can save some money there. But your capital grants, which is your OSIP grant and your gas tax, if you don't spend them this year, they have to go into reserve. So you can't use them for anything else. So they go away. And your reserves, okay, if you reduce your capital and you don't take as much money out of reserves, that's nice. You have higher reserves, but it does not help your operating budget. Your operating budget is funded by taxes. Your major expenses are things like your debt financing, which we've talked about. It's things like the levies, which are, well over $1 million, salaries, and contributions to reserves. You have contributions to reserves, which are your monies that you're putting aside for capital purposes in the future to alleviate some of that debt load. And it's a plan, it's all part of the plan. So it's a conundrum if you want that you're trying to reduce your operating budget. You go to revenues, you go to taxes, or you reduce your contributions to reserves, which I personally never recommend, or you start cutting your operating budget. And then you have to look at where can you cut your operating budget. And again, you've got commitments, you've got your levies, you've got your debt financing, you can't touch any of that. So you're looking at a smaller bucket of money that you're going to start squeezing. And a lot of that money are things like snow plowing in the winter and graveling the roads, really important stuff. So it is a conundrum to start finding savings and start cutting in the budget. As soon as you do, you could be affecting services, which will also get the phone call started. So that's the conundrum.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Nash.
Thank you. I'll just make my final comment when I wrap up here. So just on the last page is the under. I must hear. Parking lot extension nursing stations where I'm at, 12,000. And again, I think you hit on it a little bit, Barb. When you're talking about it's a balancing act, what can we do? And I've recommended a lot of cuts this year. But the parking lot extension, I would recommend we don't do it unless there's a grant that we're getting for the nursing station. So if there's a grant, then we do it because the grant will pay for it. I've also recommended maybe the community center chairs can wait another year. That was $6,000. Recommended the sunshade, maybe it can wait, even though I'm sure they're used all the time. And they're great down at the beach. And the final item was the pool and wellness that I've suggested maybe instead of being on a capital that we put it into a reserve and make a reserve for it. And then just in closing, I do totally agree. It's a big balancing act. And what can we do? But I think we really have to be careful that we're taking out a loan this year, suggested loan of $670,000 or so at 6.5%, paying it off over 15 years, which will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest. I think we just have to be really careful of that number of 36,000 is really 80,000 next year. And we're going to be increasing our just covering our debt payments, if I'm correct, from about 350,000 this year, and next year it'll be $430,000 a year, almost $500,000 to cover our debt load if we take that full loan. But I think again, we have to be really careful. And out of the recommendations that I might have suggested, that would have worked out to reducing our reserves that come out from 725,000 and change by 50,000. it would have increased the resilience by 300,000 additional going in. And it would have reduced our loan in 650,000 or so. Down to about 250,000, you could have only financed the excavator, but it would have reduced to about 425,000. So I think we really have to, our staff, go back and look at where can we really cut. And I'm a strong believer, if we can, of getting that $650,000 loan down to 200 grand somehow. I don't think the public would really like it. We're borrowing money for this year and spending 80 grand to cover that cost going forward for 10 or 15 years. So I know it's a big balancing act. I know we can't increase the taxes, so I think we really have to look at in great detail where can we save money this year to keep that tax rate of 6% is still a high tax rate, but really where can we save money? And I think trying to cut that loan amount is the number one place to do it. So thank you very much for everybody's hard work. I know this took a long time to put together, and I appreciate everybody's time on it today.
Okay, other comments? Go ahead. Other closing remarks?
Just a reminder from last night's council meeting, I brought it up during the council comments. I had a taxpayer ask about the installation of a light down at the beach, like a street light. Which I'll send and remind us for tomorrow and maybe the right side.
Okay, lighted beach, taking on that, I guess. Anybody else? Fire chief. You can shout it if you want, everybody's gone off sleep.
I just got a quick question, correct? I paid 2 charges last year under the fee for service bylaw, and I don't see those amounts in here. Maybe we'll see whether or not in there, because the one was pretty hefty. We have to. I don't see that here. Maybe it's put in somewhere else, I'm not sure, but if you could look at that. And the other question, are you gonna pass a resolution tonight to do the RFP, or how does that we do?
I don't think so. I think we'll save that for another meeting.
Why would that be just us?
Well, because I don't have a wording for the for the thing, and we got 5 minutes to go and we have to go back and
Mr. Mayor, do we have to pass a resolution? Tenders, like, I understand there's tenders out for Bravo and another pickup truck. But we have to put a resolution for Bob to do the tender.
Yeah, it has to be a resolution.
well, I don't know. I guess I'll ask our CAO to. She has a comment on that. Maybe we don't, but
We have in the past, or passed on an RFP without any commitments attached to it for operation purposes. I believe we did that with the excavator, which we didn't know we were going to.
Why don't we just go in RFP? And yeah, I've done it in the past, but whatever, it works great, it's good.
Just for clarity, the tenders or RFPs that are typically done every year, whether it's calcium or gravel. In this case, our asset management plan says, from a fee perspective, we're going to purchase something. We get started early, we get started in January, otherwise, if you don't award in time, then that's a problem, but I think the only difference with fire chief is that he needs, I'm expecting, because that's complicated, I would think, that he needs time to prepare his RFP, get all the specifications together. I think when it gets awarded, and this is when I would look to the treasurer, if you're going to award a contract, which I know the fire chief needs to do, but it's going to be paid for in a future year, how does that work from a treasury finance perspective, Barb? I've seen it done, I just don't know the technical component of it.
Hello, yes. Through you, Mr. Mayor, what it would be probably a resolution of commitment to including the project in a future year capital budget and paying for it. And I believe that's what the vendor is going to be looking for and because this is an item that is being tendered, doesn't have a budget, is not going to be included in a budget in 2023 in any way. It may be just a comfort level that there is a commitment on the part of council, and obviously there would be, but a commitment in writing on the part of council that the intent is to include it in a future budget, and that's really all you need to do.
If you don't mind, and that's when it gets awarded. Correct? Or are you suggesting that that it's not, I'm not sure, I'm personally not sure a resolution is needed to allow the fire chief to proceed with working on his RFP. I think he's actually working on it. We talked a little while ago. I know you're building the specifications.
Yeah, I think as long as there is good wording in the RFP document that it may not be awarded.
Yeah,
That would be the important piece, is that that it might not be awarded, because at that point, until it's actually awarded by council, it is not, there is not a commitment.
And that's fairly typical in any tender or RFP. So if you're asking for my opinion, which I think you did, just to make a long story longer, I'm not sure that a resolution is needed for you to proceed with your RFP.
that's my. That was my opinion as well. Thought I did, didn't I? Oh, well, anyway. All right, sorry. If there's nothing else, then motion to reconvene to a regular meeting, please, from Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Lamb. We are 6:58 PM. All those in favor, please indicate. Thank you, that's carried.
Finish the sweater by now.
A confirmatory bylaw. I don't think we really passed any resolutions, but anyway, a mover and seconder for confirmatory bylaw, please. Councillor Lamb is moving, seconded by Councillor Woods. Thank you very much. All those in favor? Thank you. And last but not least, adjournment. Councillor Bray moves. And Councillor Wood seconds, and it is 6:59 PM. All right, so thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening.